victims of forest wildfires, floods, tornadoes, volcano eruptions, along with all kinds of terrible human crimes. And terrible state, we can only hope that there will be improvement soon. We have an agenda. Do we have anyone who wishes to add to the agenda this evening? Councillor Miller?
I have an item under item 14, other business.
14, other?
If yes. Time permits.
Thank you. Anyone else? So we have an agenda, we have an addendum because there are changes to the agenda, and we have Councillor Miller adding an item which we approve. May we have a motion? Councillor Gatward?
I'm not sure if my item is the same as Councillor Miller's, but I had one item I'd like to bring up as well, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gatward has an item
under other business.
Other business.
Regarding an item that came up at AMO.
We will include it. So we have a motion, please, to approve the agenda. Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Miller. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interests. Anyone? Any member of council, that is. And before proceeding, perhaps we'll have the clerk comment on attendance.
All are in attendance except for Councillor Powell. He is currently in the hospital with an illness, but he is recovering at the moment.
Thank you. We will move on then to delegations, petitions, and presentations. The first being a real important item, presentation of Sovereign's Medal for volunteers on behalf of Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Julie Payette, Governor General of Canada, to Linda Howell. Would you come forward, please, Linda? There you go. Yes, over to the podium here. Is this all for Linda? Oh my goodness. Thank you for attending. And thank you for doing all the things you do that you're being acknowledged for. This is outstanding. The certificate from Council says, to Linda Howell, in congratulations for receiving the Sovereign's Medal for Volunteers, honoring your exceptional achievement as a volunteer in many, many different fields. So with that, and this is tremendous. And now, what else do I do here? What is the next presentation? It says the Sovereign Medal for Volunteers is awarded to Linda Howell in recognition of your significant volunteer contributions, and it's signed by the Governor General. And we're so pleased to have you as a citizen in the County of Brant accepting this, working so hard to be able to accept this. So thank you. And guide for the wearing of orders. Well, I'm sure you'll want to know that. And here's a gift. And I'm not sure what's in it. Can I look in this? Oh, that's the medal. Yes, in a small one. Isn't that lovely? I'll show everyone the Sovereign's Medal. This is a first for Brant, I'm sure.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
I'm honored.
Thank you for bringing. No, thank you for getting it for us. A pen, I'm sure that's important. And anyway, the rest of it. So thank you so much for coming. But thank you for your volunteerism. Brant is so fortunate in the number of citizens it has throughout our county, every part of our county, who put themselves out for other people and do things for them. So thank you very much.
Nice to get it.
It's sure a pleasure to know you and to present to you.
Okay, thank you.
Next is John McAlpine, County of Brant Heritage Committee Chair, who will present posters published in recognition of the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, a joint project with the County of Brant Legions. And are you going to introduce those from the Legions that are present? Is that your role or mine?
I was planning to, but I was going to invite you up.
Go ahead.
So, okay.
We'll ask them to stand as they're introduced, just so they're recognized.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start out by just sort of lifting up and giving you a quick view of the poster that we've been working on. And hopefully afterwards you'll get a chance to take a closer look at it. This plaque here we're going to present to Ron in appreciation for all the work that he's been working on with us with this over the years as well. And
Thank you very much. We shall certainly find a treasured spot for it too.
okay.
Be hung, so to speak. Very important.
Okay. This upcoming November the 11th at 11 a.m. will mark the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. The last surviving soldier has long passed. I can remember my grandfather talking and seeing the bonfires in the market square, celebrating the end of the war. He was only 9 years old and coming back from the doctor's appointment. And November 11th was also his birthday. He always thought it was nice they had a holiday to celebrate his birthday. Today we mark it as a solemn occasion. It was to be the war to end all wars. But as we all know how that worked out. Over the last couple years, the Brant County Heritage Advisory Committee, and maybe they could quickly just stand up. So we have Steve, and we have Mike over here, and Carol, and Lana's sitting, and Steve Howes has been a strong part of the committee, and Ruth isn't here tonight, but Steve Schmidt is also on the committee. And Steve's picture of his grandfather embarking on the boat to go overseas is there, the top corner on the right. So it's kind of a nice little extra piece there. So anyway, we've been gathering photos that represented both our country and the county and its involvement in the First World War, and some iconic pictures from overseas as well. It is always a challenge to make the final decision, but we had a great deal of help from the members of our local Legion. And tonight, we have with us representatives from Burford. Ron Savard, is he here?
Stand for it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks very much. And as well, Paris President Andy Moran, over in the corner here. And from St. George, we have Ed Hunter as the president, and also Steve Schmidt. And so we really appreciate all the work that you've been doing for us with this poster. And we have plaque copies here available for you to pick up and take back with you tonight for your legions. So, Rick Shaver from the Wartime Museum, is he here tonight as well?
Thank you.
And Rick has offered from us several photos from his private collection as well as the museum, and they're in the photo, and we really appreciate that as well. And there's a plaque copy here for you as well, picked up it later. The Paris St. George Museum and the Brant County Library, members of advisory board, and of course Carol Moore, who pulled it all together. So that's much appreciated. The war marked a turning point in the history in many ways. As we saw planes take flight, they were quickly conscripted into the war effort. The horror of chemical warfare was realized. The last cavalry charge took place during this war. Brantford at this time was the third largest industrial site in the country, and here in the county we also made ammunitions in Paris and St. George. Jackets for the military were knitted here in Paris. Wagons were still being built in St. George for the war effort, not to mention the food grown and shipped overseas for the effort. On the poster, we have tried to pick pictures that reflect many of the aspects. I hope everyone gets a chance to get a close-up look. Our legions are going to be distributing them for donation, and I hope people give generously to the generations we'll be able to remember. Hopefully, one day we will also learn a lesson. Many went to war, but not all returned, and they are remembered still across the county. And I am glad that we take the time to keep the monuments to the fallen soldiers across the county in good repair. I would like to invite individuals and groups to take a chance to take a look at this later after the meeting, and of course to go to the Legions to get your own copies. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you, John, for your presentation, and we thank the representatives of the Legion for being here, and Rick. Yes.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I would like to see the 4 representatives come up with Carol and John, and if you've got their plaques there, present them, and I know there's a couple of photographers here who would probably like to get a picture of the representatives, Ed, and the other 2 gentlemen, and this gentleman from Scotland is here. I think they should come up to the front and be presented properly.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, would you please join us at the podium? We'll make room. There may not be room, but we'll make room. It's as simple as that. Thank you for joining us. Where do you want them?
If everybody could just come up.
And to fill in the time, I might say, maybe because I'm a little bit older, but I knew some World War I veterans who were still active when I was about. I remember them very well. Some of them would tell you things, others would not. Discuss the matter. Can I stand beside Mr. Shaver? Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Set hand on my head.
Cheese.
One more. If you close your eyes, I have to draw them in afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay? Thank you. Yes. Applause. And thank you, John, for making the presentation. Very important part of our proceedings this evening. The next item is C, being a public hearing regarding the application for noise bylaw exemption from National Structures 2011, Inc., August 1 to December 15, 2018, regarding Middletown Line Road. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this hearing? Second call, anyone wish to speak to this hearing at this time? Third and final call, anyone wish to speak to this hearing at this time? If not, I declare that the public hearing on this matter closed, and we'll move on. Item D, Deborah Andre, St. George parking lot proposal. Please come forward. Welcome. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, honorable councilors, county staff, members of the gallery here. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come one more time and speak. I'm speaking about the situation that's happening in St. George concerning the parking lot. But also now I've learned that we are having many, many more planning processes going on. And I know that we have the Paris Links Road West, an area residents group, and we have people all in the area, citizens who want to be involved in how this county is developed. So I'm only one person trying to participate, okay? There are some disturbing items when one considers the way in which proposed changes to the United Church parking lot have been carried out. Now, we met Ms. Newton and some of the other planning staff people, and we were treated very nicely. We, had several meetings with them. But the county staff indicated that the talks have been going on for over a year between the United Church Committee and people at the county. Now, when my husband saw county workers in the parking lot and asked what was going on, he was told by a man from the church that it was none of his business. I started to email people at the county right away. That was June 26th, only to be told that the plan had been made without reference to or consideration of the neighbors who had had an ongoing agreement with the church since 2004 to close the Main Street North access to the lot except for church functions. It had taken 2 years to arrive at an agreement, and the church, in sign of the agreement, had built a gate, that the gate would be shut except for church functions, and that had been working quite nicely for 14 years. So I searched the Corporate Development Committee records from the minutes and the agendas from January 2017 to June 2018 for any public discussions or opportunities to participate in the decision-making process, and I found only 2 references. One was at a Corporate Development Committee minutes, date Monday, December the 11th, 2017, in camera, moved by Councillor Pierce, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the Corporate Development Committee convene in camera to consider a proposed acquisition of land by the municipality, parking options St. George. Now, I don't know if a lease is considered an acquisition of land, but that's how it was written. The second reference was Corporate Development Committee agenda, Monday, June the 11th, 2018. The Economic Development and Strategic Investments, CD 1861, St. George United Church parking lease by Ms. Newton. Recommendation that the County of Brant enter into a lease for additional public parking in the St. George on property at the St. George United Church, and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign and execute the lease with the St. George United Church. In the minutes of that same day, it's moved by Councillor Wheat, seconded by Mayor Eddy, that the County of Brant enter into a lease for additional public parking in St. George on property at the St. George United Church, and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign and execute the lease with the St. George United Church, and it was carried. Now, I was here at a meeting on August the 13th, and St. George United Church parking lease, Councillors Wheat and Schmidt declared pecuniary interests with respect to this matter and withdrew from discussion and voting. Okay, this I got from the minutes, but I do have to wonder about what reason Mr. Wheat might have for declaring a conflict due to pecuniary interest in the matter of voting on the county staff's recommendation, but Mr. Wheat did not declare a conflict when he moved that the county enter into a lease with the United Church for the use of the parking lot on June the 11th, 2018. In the minutes of August 13th, Ms. Newton further clarified that the lease is currently in effect, and that by the time the lot is ready to use, there will be 8 to 9 months to monitor activity before renewal is considered in 2019. So the staff has been directed to implement the lease agreement with the St. George United Church for additional parking with the mitigation measures outlined in the staff report. I would dearly love to see which mitigation measures are being referenced. Is that because the church has already received the money? I'm also wondering, is county staff willing to stipulate that the strip of land between 8 and 12 Main Street North is zoned residential, HAR 230, as is shown on the zoning bylaw map 27B? Not only is it not a commercial parking lot, it isn't zoned commercial at all. Unlike, well, for example, the lot at 13 Main Street South, the address of the former township office of South Dumfries. That area is zoned HAC4, commercial. Just as the commercial parking lot on High Street across from the post office. Number 3, the parking lot at the Bank of Montreal, which is not used for business after 4 p.m. except for Fridays. Parking lot at Food Town, the parking lot at the St. George Hardware Mall, the parking lot at the old Ritchie Milk Strip Mall, and the parking lot at the Legion. That's 7 commercial parking lots in downtown St. George. The strip of land between number 8 and number 12 Main Street North is not one of them. Now, James Graber from Paris Links Road West in the area residents group made an observation about some difficulties encountered by those wishing to participate in community planning, namely poor outreach, poor communication, the use of technology, and I would like to add jargon. The St. George and Brant and Burford CIPs are in progress, expect to be presented for council's consideration. Unless you're actually working in the field, it's really hard to know what that is. Now, the provincial website lists the process of consultation as an extremely important concept in the context of managing an organization. Consultation is an active process in which organization management opens formal and informal communication channels between the organization and its stakeholders. It's a regulatory process by which the public's input on matters affecting them is sought. Its main goals are improving the efficiency, transparency, and public involvement in large-scale projects or laws and policies. The neighbors of the St. George parking lot were not consulted about the use of the land that touches our private property. We certainly are stakeholders. We have learned from Ms. Newton that the St. George Master Plan is expected to be completed shortly, and I emailed her for more information, and she was very kind in delivering me the information I requested. The St. George Master Plan budget is the budget for 2019, and then we heard about things like an RFP and a Q1 2019, so she clarified, right? Q1 is the first quarter, sometime in March, and the FRP, where are we, is a request for proposals. And she said, we usually release these publicly, asking for proposals from consultants to lead major projects such as a master plan. These will generally include the deliverables and expectations for the project and budget considerations. All right. Now I'm saying and I'm stating, and I'm going to continue to be in communication, we would like to know the items that are being considered for the St. George Master Plan before it is voted on and agreed upon. We have already learned what can happen when we discover after the fact the proposals that have been accepted, and by the time we find out, it's too late for us to actually participate. Okay, so I'm going to be around. I'm not going to disappear, and I appreciate the kindness and the generosity that I have received from the county staff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions by members of council at this time? For St. George. Councillor Gatler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is with respect to what we received in our council package.
Yes.
On page 4, it's item 4D, like yes. David, and it's page 2 of a letter that Ms. Andre submitted to council. And in the letter she states that a prominent downtown business owner drew up the petition. Mm-hmm. And I questioned that and found out that that statement is in fact not correct. It was drawn up by a church member. So I just wanted to clear that up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, I see. That just, the businessman's name was prominently on the petition, and it showed that he was presenting the petition, so I figured that he had drawn it up. So thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions by members of council? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I didn't quite hear what you were saying. You said you wanted to add one more thing. Did you say jargon?
Jargon.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, things like, well, I think I used a couple examples, RFP, Q1, CIPs. Most of the people who don't work in the planning field are not familiar with those terms, with those letters. And so explaining what those mean is actually helpful to the process.
Thank you.
Any other member of council? None? Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Your requests will be presented later. With that, we'll move on to Jim Graver, number E, Jim Graver, Paris Links Road West, an area residents group and concerned residents of Paris. Preferred alternative to Grand River North Corridor Environment Assessment. Welcome. Please proceed when you're ready.
Okay, and then just speak right back. Oh, sorry.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Eddy.
Good evening.
Councilors of Brant County. Sorry. My name is Jim Graver, and I'm here tonight representing the Paris Links Road and Area Residents Group and a group of petitioners known as the Concerned Residents of Paris.
Right.
Over the past 3 months, our group has grown significantly in the hopes that you will hear our collective voice of concerns about what is happening and what is about to happen to the community of Paris. When the Paris Links Road and Area Residents Group first got together on June the 3rd, we spoke of two things. The first was what to do about the Grand River Street North Class EA extension that would severely impact our quality of life and our home values. The second was what is happening to the community of Paris in the North End with respect to the traffic and congestion that is becoming unsustainable for the community. We knew we had to focus on the main issue at hand. So, at our delegation to Brant County Council on June the 26th, 2018, we expressed our objections to the lack of timing, processes, documentation, and community involvement surrounding the Paris Links Road alignment Alt 6 proposed by the Class E extension for Grand River Street North. At our delegation to the Planning Advisory Committee on August the 7th, 2018, we expressed our concerns about the unusual arrangement within the LPAT agreement between the Paris Grand Estates and Brant County that could lead to the destruction of a landmark rail corridor. This corridor is now being pursued by the Class EA extension that was approved by only a small majority, with 2 of the 4 Paris councillors missing and 1 objecting at Brant County Council on April the 24th, 2018. At our delegation to the Corporate Development Committee on August the 13th, 2018, we expressed our concerns about the irregularities as to how the Class EA, the Grand River Street North, evolved at the controversial Community Cafe held December the 7th, 2017, and how the Class EA extension is now being conducted. Today we are here to advise that our residents group has gone to the broader community through community meetings, petition stations, and public dialogue. It was clear from this that there are many concerns that connect directly with our 8 core objectives as stated at the CDC committee on August the 13th. What was of most interest is that with a varied demographic from long-established residents to those who only moved here a short time ago, not a single objection was heard about the Brant County community vision. A copy of which was provided to council this last week. In fact, everyone we spoke to embraced the vision and frequently stated that it was those words in the community vision that brought them here in the first place. Perhaps the biggest concern among those living in the community of Paris is that the community and all that it is and all that it has been may be on a fast track to being no more. While we accept that change and growth is inevitable, established residents are now aware that the county officials no longer appear to follow the guidelines in the community vision. Those that live here now question the direction that the county is taking without clear public input. For most of us who are not paid by the county and are not politically motivated, it has become both a challenge and a burden to speak of these troublesome issues that impact our daily lives. We must state we are disappointed that even with the guidelines in place, we do not believe that this council is aligned with the vision or the community of communities as stated in this document. Through our open and public dialogue, public appearances, and nearly 400 signed petitions, a cohesive group grew. This should clearly illustrate to this council and staff that the proposed alternative 6 solution is not and has never been what the community wanted, and is what led to our 8 core objectives. As requested by council August the 13th, to put forward a proposed solution that works for the community, a number of area residents embraced the Brant County community vision and shared their ideas on a number of drawings and doodles. They're all here. Our group harvested these ideas to create an alternative to that being proposed by the class environmental assessment as the technically preferred solution, Alternative 6. We have called it the Community Preferred Alternative 7, or Alt 7 for short. Alt 7 provides for a north-south collector connecting the Paris Grand Estate Settlement to Scott Avenue and or Watts Pond Road without going through any of the established communities. It provides a connection point at low elevation for a future eastern bypass bridge at Green Lane, and most importantly, it will help alleviate traffic load on Grand River Street North until an eastern bypass bridge is built. I will now outline how our community groups Alt 7 aligns with the previously presented objectives. Objective 1, to provide greater safety to area schools, businesses, and retirement facilities, which is critical for children, the elderly, and the general public to move about safely and may eliminate the need for a future roundabout at Silver and Grand River Street North. Objective 2, reduce the traffic impact on Grand River Street North corridor without threat of expropriation. With Alt 7, much of the traffic load from the PGE development will be moved north, and therefore there is no need to align Paris Links Road with Silver Street, thus eliminating short or long-term expropriation measures. Objective 3, align a solution with a future bypass bridge in accordance with the Transportation Master Plan in order to sustain long-term viability of Paris. Alt 7 positions the north end of Paris for a future bridge in appropriate location at lower grade elevation to alleviate the impending traffic congestion on Grand River Street and allow for future development to the north and west of the community. Objective 4, protect the Great Western Corridor along its length from the Paris Junction to the Grand River crossing on West River Road for a link trail as part of the Natural Heritage Linkage Strategy for abandoned rail corridors. To interconnect the Grand Valley Rail Trail and the Great Western Rail Corridor via Lions Park and the Three Sisters abutments at the Murray Lookout is not a new idea. It has been presented to a number of Paris councils prior to the Brant County amalgamation. It is a sustainable planning idea at its best, and it is imperative for North Paris. Objective 5, prevent the established residential road infrastructure from being utilized as a collector road for the new settlement. Alt 7 recommends building a new north-south collector road for the Paris Grand Estates development and abandon the cost of reconstruction of the old Concession 1 Paris Links Road through the development as suggested in the LPAT agreement dated June the 15th, 2018. Objective 6, protect all of the established residential areas on both sides of the Paris Grand Estates development. Now that the golf course is closed, only the old 5-meter Paris Links Road on the east side of the development, allow the old 5-meter Paris Links Road on the east side of the development to merge with West River Road and the estate residential and rural property owners to keep their rural and naturalized settings undisturbed. Allow the established communities along Paris Links Road, Bailey Drive, and the Capron Survey to the west of the PGE development to be protected by a cul-de-sac or an eastbound-only connection to the PGE development, thereby separating it from the new settlement. This will prevent 11 homes on Paris Links Road from having a collector road in both their front and backyards, only 60 meters apart. Objective 7, prevent the remaining green space to the north of the corridor. You need to remember that our green areas are nature's air filters, and they are the only defense we have from pollution created by the onslaught of the automobile. The northern end of the community needs to protect this unique and well-established green space. Objective 8, maintain the integrity of the Brant County community vision. As stated on page 3 and 8, the community vision is not just a statement, it is a goal for community excellence and allows the north end of Paris to preserve its unique heritage that is of paramount importance to the community. Objective 9, keep our community the prettiest little town in Canada. On page 3 of the Brant County Community Vision, that growth planning, economic development, and natural stewardship must be undertaken in a responsible manner with a view to the long-term sustainability of both the community and its broader surroundings. Finally, the Council asked us to propose an alternative solution on August the 7th and again on the 13th. With community input and embracing the County of Brant Community Vision, we feel that Alternative 7 is the preferred solution that works for the community and the future of Paris. Now that we have provided Council with our community's preferred solution, we need to know what steps the Council will take to move the public will forward. We will leave you with these thoughts. Let's join together and make Brant simply grand and not simply something we cannot understand. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions by members of council? Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, thank you, Mr. Graber, for your new proposal. We did request it, and you've done a great job. My only concern or question I have at this moment is looking at your map of your new road proposal, going to Watts Pond or going to Scott Ave. Where do the traffic go after they leave Watts Pond Road or Scott Ave? Do they still use Grand River Street North?
I'm not a transportation engineer. And you shouldn't, I really can't comment other than we feel that this is an appropriate solution. Because people will be heading north, west, but a lot of them are heading south. And we don't want them through our community.
I just asked, where would they go? Down Granville Street North? I don't know. That you don't have any arrows going south or north or west or east.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Councillor Cardy. Thank you, Your Worship, and Mr. Graber, thank you for the group's input. As you see here, we have a couple other groups here tonight that are very interested in this, and we're waiting to hear from them as well on their thoughts. But I take it very seriously, because coming from an industry where you're held accountable for a lot of things, I do like to do due diligence and transparency and communication, as you talked about earlier. So I've asked the clerk to pull up a slide of the overview of the Great Western Rail that encroaches on your back property, as well as the homes on that area. Thank you, Heather. And in that area, Mr. Graber, I believe your house is almost directly across from the Bailey Drive entrance there?
Yes.
And if you look at the backyards there, I see, and you'll see the property lines, and they're within a foot to a foot and a half. I've been told by the Director of Planning that this mapping is very accurate. And again, we talked about this before in the past, and I'm not going to get into about how the government gave us a dirty deal and deemed us a high growth area and we had to deal with it, but I'm concerned because when I do my due diligence, I see that people have encroached on the property owned by Dufferin Aggregates. And that's a concern to me, because we're not getting the whole picture here of what's happening. So when I go and do my due diligence and see grass cut down the trail, fire pits, picnic tables on property, I kind of look at that and go, so what could be one of the other reasons why this is happening? Because I'm looking at it from a broad perspective from the whole county's point of view, okay? And I do appreciate the input from everybody here who's put input in, but my question is, I guess, and as you look across the other side, there's a garden that's been put on the side of the hill, and people are using the back laneway to the Girl Guide camp for their parking on Bradbury Crescent. They go in and they go in the back, and they may have variances or encroachment agreements with Dufferin, I don't know. But that's a big concern for me, because before anything could ever happen, even if we did or did not use that, we would have to go in and check all this out. And it's very concerning to me that people are coming about this, and then we check it out, and we're seeing that they're going over and encroaching on property that's not even theirs. And it's a concern to me that people are doing that. And then they come to council and ream us out and say, we're not being transparent, we're not communicating, and yet when I do my homework, I see this and I go, well, what's the real answer here? And what's the real concern here?
Is that the question?
That's the question.
The question is that, the answer is that 400 people have stated clearly, 400 petitioners have actually stated that they want to protect this corridor for the community. It's nothing to do with a garden that's been there for 60 years, sir. 60 years. Long before Dufferin Aggregates owned that. And that garden is a community garden, sir. The elderly at the old age home use that garden.
And I think it's great. The concern I have is there a variance or an encroachment agreement with Dufferin Aggregates on that property?
Okay. Do we really need to get into this today?
Sir, you're talking transparency and communication. And I stood in that last meeting at CDC and gave you an opportunity to talk.
Sorry?
At last CDC meeting, I backed you up and gave you a reason to talk, and I said, we all need to work together on this, but when I start doing my homework and seeing encroachments on property that doesn't belong to people, and then we have to come and answer to everything that's going on, and then I see this up there, where there are encroachments on property that people don't own, what's the real reason here? Yes, there were 400 people that signed a petition.
I'm not protecting that. If you would like that to all go to the wildlife again, that's not a problem. That has been there for 60 years. A lot of people use that. Before the on July the 13th, let me get the date, just so for the record. On July the 13th, 2013, Do you remember the day?
Yes, I do.
That's good, because that was one of the most violent storms in the north end of the community. It took thousands of trees down.
I went around, sir. I know all about it.
Well, on July the 14th, we spoke with the senior manager at Dufferin Aggregates. And he asked, he actually said, and there's 4 people here witnessing that, he said to us 2 things. One is, we should get an agreement and for $1 a year for that garden. And I said, absolutely. Took his card and approached him repeatedly, and this is all documented, even by email, to actually have that there. And it's only a walking area anyway. It is nothing else. Yes, there is not an easy way to fix that up, but leading up to this, that July 13th incident, that railroad corridor was open all the way to the golf course. It has been open, and I'll tell you how I know that, because we have been maintaining that. We have been cutting that grass down that corridor for 60 years. My father did it, I've done it, and there's only 7 trees there crossing the corridor for people to walk on. And that's just been there. It's not that I'm protecting it. You know that. I know you know that.
Mr.
And you
Graber,
are accusing, don't accuse me of anything you can't prove.
Mr. Graber, I'm not accusing. I'm
I think
asking
you are.
questions. I'm asking questions,
And I'm
sir.
answering them, sir.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got my...
I don't think we're
across.
finished here with this, sir.
Councillor Coleman, point of order. I will now enter the fray, and Councillor Carty, I will advise you that officials of Dufferin Aggregate have complained to me about the unauthorized use of their properties by citizens in that area. Nothing was done about it.
Thank you, Your
I do
Worship.
have a question. Oh, is any other member of council have a question? Because I have a very, very important question that I want everyone here to hear the question and hear the answer. It's imperative that we do that. You point out the vision, community vision. Do you know what a vision is?
Only what I've read on the internet, on your website, sir.
A community vision is an attempt to get the best procedure, road forward, to use land, develop land. And that's, so I want, do you think council wanted to change that? No, we didn't, but here's the answer. The dear province of Ontario, in its wisdom, developed the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Now, what did that do to us in Brantford? Well, they decided that a lot more land was going to be developed. It's going to be developed. It's going to tell you, and it does tell you, how many persons per acre, how many total population you will grow to, and you must do this. And this is nothing new for municipal government, because we had this back in the 70s, etc. But we are told, so here's the plate, you follow it. We had no choice. The other one was annexation. We had no choice. You develop an annexation agreement or we'll do it for you. So here what we're faced. This is a vision. It was beautiful. We didn't want it changed. Your council didn't. The council was forced to do it. I was forced to do it. And you can't change provincial government mind. There's only one way. And guess what happened? It was done. But that's what you're living with, the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and what you're going to do, and how you're going to develop the land, and how many people, how many factories. Everything is prescribed, I assure you. Do you think I want to live as a mayor that way? No, I want something to say, but you're not. Applications go to staff. Staff have to respond on what is in the official plan. The official plan is designated by the province of Ontario. So that's what you've got. Now, what do you do when this happens? Well, if you want to grow at all, you proceed. And you must grow. You're told you're going to grow. Because if you don't do the growth, they'll do it for you. And don't think it hasn't been happening. Now, what do you do when you find yourself in a predicament like this, where you're being told you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're going to do it now, and you're going to do it this way? What do? The only way out is to have an environmental assessment. What, Mr. CAO, is the purpose of an environmental assessment for the municipality of the Council of Brant and its people who must abide by it because we must? Would you mind answering that if you can?
Through your worship, an environmental assessment's purpose is to basically help a municipality arrive at new infrastructure solutions for its area. So.
Thank you very much. Now, if we hadn't proceeded that way, you would have somebody else sitting at these desks doing it to you, for you. I'll say to you, because that's the way it is. It took a provincial election to change things, and maybe they changed too far. That's up to you. You can live with. But I'll tell you, we didn't want to change the vision. That was our vision, but we had to, and we were forced to. Councillor Pierce, take me off the hook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if I could, a couple things here. First of all, through you to Mr. Graber, thank you for this. You're absolutely...
Yes.
Sorry, I just thought maybe I'd have some eye contact when I'm speaking with you. Thank you for this. We did ask you a couple times to bring this. You did, so it's appreciated. I can see you folks put a lot of work into this. Couple things about this, though. First of all, when we got our package last Friday with our agenda, I looked in there, your name was in there under the agenda, and you had an attachment to it. I was excited because you had said that we were going to get some ideas, some different solutions come today. I opened it up. There wasn't any new solutions. What it was the vision. There's nothing wrong with that. Read through the vision, thinking that maybe as I went to the bottom of it, there would be a solution. We had a conversation at the last meeting we were at about us receiving things on an addendum last minute. Again, there was a lot of work went into this. I'm curious as to the way you spoke at the last couple of meetings. You were like this close to finishing this off. You were going to bring it, but it wasn't quite finished, so that's why you didn't bring it. Now all of a sudden today, at 10 to 3 or 10, I think it was around 10 to 3 this afternoon, we get this. Again, I appreciate the work that's gone into it, yes. But you also have to appreciate the fact that I don't want to be reading this when you're presenting it, because I feel that's kind of rude to you. I feel I should be prepared with the information you're bringing to us. I can't do that when I get it at 10 to 3 on the day of the meeting. We spoke of this the last meeting and the meeting before that, and yet here we go again, another meeting, last minute information. So that's my one point. You made a statement that you talked about objective number 4, how it was at several parish councils prior to the County of Brant amalgamation. First of all, that was 18 years ago, okay? 18 years ago, we were not in the places to grow as mandated by the provincial government, okay? 18 years ago, the thought in this, at that point in time before it was the County of Brant, the thought in the town of Paris was the fact that there was no way that we could foresee the growth in this town. Not a chance. All of a sudden, you fast forward 15 years, 12, 15 years, we're now in the places to grow. Yeah. As has been stated, we don't have a choice in that. We must grow by this amount per year to reach 57,000 by 2041 in the county. So when you make statements that it was passed by several parish councils prior to the County of Brant amalgamation was your words, that's great. I appreciate that, but it means nothing in this. That's a full different time. Times in this town 18 years ago were different. Things in this town 18 years from now will be different. The fact of the matter is we're being forced to do things. We need to figure out the best way to do it. You've helped us by giving us this. Finally, we've asked for it.
Thank you, sir.
excuse me, I'm not finished. Please don't interrupt me when I have the floor. Okay? Thank you. Again, I appreciate the work that went into this, but it would have been nice to receive this earlier, as was requested at the last meetings. Thank you.
Any other member of council wish to...
Can I respond?
Pardon?
Can I respond?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So a lot of things get said here, right?
Yes.
Very quickly.
Indeed.
And we're not here to be arguing tonight. That's what the thought was, I believe. You asked us to come back with some sort of resolve, and that's what we've done. It takes time. And there isn't a lot of council meetings to present, obviously. So a couple of things I can tell you is I'm a bit concerned about this thing, that you've been in this growth plan for a while. And something that came to me, I think it was Friday or Thursday last week, by an email from your consultant. And he said this, that in that report, and I hope you all have it, that reported that the Director of Planning stated that these expansion areas that you blame the province for had been in the municipal official plan for 18 years. This is confusing to me, and I think it's confusing to a lot of people that are involved with this. That this is when you've had this in the municipal plan for 18 years. Why has nobody come with a better idea than what's being proposed now? And we only got notified of this on May the 24th. You would think that over an 18-year period that you would have some better solution. If this is in fact true, that in the official plan, all this land was being proposed for development. It's confusing. No, it's okay. Is that okay? I have a couple of things, but it's up to you. It's just that 18, you understand what I'm trying to say. If this has been in the official plan, why would we not come up with a better solution than this and at least notify people? But we've had literally no notice until May the 24th. And that's unfortunate. We're all caught off guard here. And yeah, we have our defense up, and we have to work through your committee structures to get this information out there. We have to understand what we have so that you understand. We don't have any other way to do it other than to speak and to put this stuff together. Like, that's the best we can do. We're not engineers, we're not planners, we're not we're not accountants, at least nobody that I'm aware of. And so this has been very difficult. And that's all I can say about this situation. If I could have given this to you earlier, I would have. But there's only a couple of people here that can put this together. As I said, a lot of this community that we're representing are older people. There's 95-year-old people here. There's one here right now. There's a lot of older people in that community. Everyone on Pierce Links Road, pretty much within 7 or 8 houses on both sides of me, in fact, are older people. And they don't even have computers. That's how difficult this is to put in an understandable format. I can't sit there and make speeches. And that wasn't ever my design in life. We're just trying to communicate what we have to offer. And our concerns for obvious reasons, right? I don't want to really get into this. I think you had a motion set at the last meeting, but I won't go there yet. But I would like to talk to something Mr. Carty has said and something the mayor has said. But you can, if you would like to ask me something, I'll stop talking.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Wheat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Graber, I got an easier question for you, at least I think. If you go back to your slides, because that isn't your slide. And it doesn't matter which slide you choose, Objective 2 or Objective 3, they're both kind of, the mapping is still the same. So choose one of them. That's my presentation.
Oh, sorry. Too many presentations.
That one will work.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one works, Mr. Graber. Now on Grand River Street North, there's an intersection at Scott There's an intersection at Watts Pond Road, and you've got circles. Does that mean you're suggesting a roundabout at those two intersections?
No, it's just a concept, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Believe me, this is just a
I
concept.
told you I'd have an easy question for you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Actually,
I'd advise that at my request, the former CAO, Paul, prepared the statement of following the annexation of the Paris Golf Course from the Hick Township of South Humphreys Township so they could control it. 2 years later, they changed the zoning and they changed it to development lands, and therein lies your problem. That's the problem right there. And he had that in writing. He knows it. He knows the people who did it, and as I do. So it wasn't all sunshine, as you have pointed out, but we live with the past, good or bad, and it does vary considerably. Councillor Cardy, last speaker.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Mr. Graber, I do like to apologize for being loud. I don't mean to be loud to you, but it is a issue that I take very seriously, and we all have to be responsible on both sides of the table.
Thank you.
We all, as we said in that last meeting, Mr. Graber, we all need to work together on this and make sure we do it right. And that's truly the bottom line of all this, is doing it right. I do believe, as we had talked earlier, we need to get away from the finger-pointing crap and start concentrating on this and getting it done. But
It's important.
we have to do it in a way that's going to be beneficial for the whole town. The whole town. And that's what we have to look at. And I know that's what our staff is looking at as well.
And following the closing of this, we will have, the council will have the opportunity to discuss how it wishes to proceed, and that'll be before you. Thank you for your presentation. And the next is Ella Haley regarding the Canesville infrastructure costs. Can we say proposed costs? I don't think they're costs, they're proposed costs. This is that. Good evening. It had to be said. It was an issue. People wanted it right. Welcome. Please proceed when you're ready, Dr. Haley.
Mr. Mayor, might I suggest just we wait?
We'll wait a couple minutes still. The bulk of the audience has left. Thank you for coming. Hope you learned something.
I really feel sad about that. I don't think this is democracy. So that's just my reflection on what I'm seeing there. I do support places to grow, but I think that you need to have meaningful consultation with people. People need to be able to choose the kind of development that happens in their neighborhood. And official plans are really hard to understand.
Mr. Mayor, point of order here. Is this part of her presentation?
Yes, it is.
I would ask
it is.
This is part of your presentation?
Yes, it is. I'm talking about growth.
Interesting. Yeah. Presentation.
Yeah.
She sees fit to do otherwise.
I'm talking about growth.
I understand here.
And so I do support places to grow, but I really feel that the community has to have a say in it and be treated with respect. And over and over, I hear.
You soon have an opportunity to vote.
Okay.
That's what you want.
So I'm coming back to development charges in Canesville and development plans in Canesville, but it's the whole picture. You're talking about the official plan for the whole county. So whatever they're talking about in the last delegation also pertains to me as far as community consultation, respectful community consultation. Okay? So we're looking at the servicing strategy here, and I believe that you're voting on it this evening. And I just wanted to make some comments. It looks like a very, very expensive proposal, and that troubles me. I think it needs to go to the community before you vote on this and let this go any further. Development charges never pay for development, and basically sprawl increases costs because of the ongoing cost of maintenance and renewal. that we will bear, Brant County will bear that cost. Calgary's mayor calls this a sprawl subsidy, the ongoing cost of sprawl. And then it increases as well with inflation. So the further we sprawl, the more it costs to live here in Brant County. It increases property taxes, and that's why I think we need a referendum. We need to ask the ratepayers, do they support this? I think it should be on the referendum on the, I know there's not enough time right now, but there should be a referendum on whether or not people want their taxes increased for sprawl. There's increased costs the further we grow out. There's increased costs of maintaining and servicing the larger infrastructure, and not to mention the renewal costs. I remember listening to Hazel McCallion on CBC, the queen of sprawl, and this was 25 years after she'd done a lot of sprawl, and then pipes needed to be replaced, and she was talking about how expensive it was now to replace the pipes. So I just wanted to look at the Public Works Committee report, and when I look at it, all of you have seen it. It's looking at the report is called basically the servicing strategy, and there's a heading, financial considerations, none.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you do Greenfield Development Phase 2, south of the railway in Cainsville, that's another $28.1 million. If you do a build out in Phase 2 of the airport, that's another $31.2 million. So I'm quite surprised it says financial considerations, none. I just wanted to add a few more comments here. Basically, I feel that the community of Cainsville, the community of around the airport, they all need to have meaningful consultation, respectful consultation. I'm not seeing that tonight, but I sure hope that our neighborhoods get that, the airport community and the Cainsville community. Before we, basically, if council votes to go ahead with this tonight, you're voting to give us increased taxes. And so I think that we need to have meaningful consultation on that. Yes. I remember listening to our CAO talking about the purchase of the 6 acres for the community hall and the new fire station. And with due respect, I remember having that discussion, and you explained that it won't cost us more, it'll be debt servicing. It'll be paid by debt servicing. Well, debt servicing, you know, in our household or in anyone's household, debt servicing costs us. It still costs us. I think too, I hear about the growth, that the growth plan was forced on us. I hear that. But I also know too, Mayor Eddy, that you sold your farm to Walton. There was a big land banking company.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay.
That statement should not be made.
So I'm on the landfill committee.
Your worship, that's a personal attack.
I'm just stating fact. I have the deed. I have the deed.
See that it's,
So it's just that if we say we're forced into growth.
She's always been that way with me.
Yeah. If we say we're forced into growth, but we're selling to land bankers, then I think we need to say that in a very measured way. Okay. We argue, or I'm hearing Mayor Eddy, you argue that this growth is forced on us. And I wanted you to look at Okotoks, and we've talked about Okotoks before.
Read it.
Okay, Okotoks Council voted limits to growth. They said we will only grow so much. The next council voted for a water pipeline to Calgary, just as we're voting for a water pipeline.
Point of order, Your Worship. What does this have to do with what she is supposed to be talking about, which is the Cainsville infrastructure costing? I don't care what Calgary does. They don't have the same provincial laws that we have. Deal with what's at hand and what you came here to talk about. Quit grandstanding and make your point.
I'm talking about
Quit grandstanding.
I am talking
Just a
about
moment,
pipelines.
please.
Pipelines going to the airport, into Cainsville,
Dr.
and the
Haley,
cost.
you came here for a stated purpose.
Yes,
You
I did.
went through the clerk.
Yes.
Now, are you prepared to follow that?
I am. I'm talking about the servicing strategy
Because
and pipelines.
You're making some statements that I can agree with, and I want to explain. You're saying these costs, these are proposed cost.
Yes.
And nothing has been looked at. It's a proposal to look at spreading the growth out to various areas. As you have seen tonight, the people of Paris don't want all the growth, nor do we want to put it all in Paris and make it far worse than it is. But you're talking now, and yes, but the important part about the infrastructure, both Cainesville and the airport, is both lands, and there are additional lands, are established in wards. Some of them can be served reasonably, some can't. So why do you think that because we have a proposed report going to the Council of the City of Brantford, because we had agreed to look at, for them to come back and respond to, why do you think that that means that we're proceeding to spend millions of dollars in those regards as proposed?
I guess
because that isn't the way we operate.
before we send it to Brantford, I really feel we need public consultation with the ratepayers, because we are sending this document to the city, and it has a huge price tag, a huge, huge price tag. So I'll just finish here. I think we need to question this strategy. We need to question entering into this expensive deal. We need public meetings on it. I think we need a referendum on it. And
The matter of referenda have come up, and I've been asked about, but referenda questions have to be decided at the before the close of nominations and be listed.
I know that.
And it's very restricted legislation that you should, if you're going to use, you should know.
okay, this is a big, big decision in August. In fact, when most people are on holidays, it's in August, and it's coming at the very end of your term. I think it's a big, big decision. And it should have been, I think it should go forward to a referendum. It's a huge, huge price tag that we are giving the city without consulting with the ratepayers. So that's my reflection on that, and that's why I asked to speak tonight. I'm very concerned about the possible approval of this, this going to the city before the ratepayers have a chance to have a say. Okay, thank you. And I want to say I respect you in many ways, Mayor Eddy. I really respect you.
You wish?
I respect you in many ways.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'm overwhelmed.
I know I have to challenge you on some things, but I respect you on others.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, I'm just trying to get things straight here, because there was many different things spoken of there. I thought she was just going to speak about Cainesville infrastructure cost. But she made the point that Brant County will bear the cost of this. The citizens of Brant County.
And Brantford.
Excuse me, I'm speaking, okay? Brant County will bear the cost of this. So it's quite interesting that, first of all, you start your presentation by talking about respectful consultation. When you fire out allegations like that, I'm not quite sure where the respect is there. But at any rate, let's speak of the ones that we're talking earlier. In their proposal, they propose an eastern bypass bridge, which is probably going to be in the neighborhood of $60 to $70 million. $60 to $70 million. But apparently, you don't have a problem with that.
I'm not saying that.
Apparently, you said that it's going to be, you don't want the Brant, you said the Brant County taxpayers will bear the cost. Now you're talking the Brant County taxpayers will bear the cost of that bridge as well. You never mentioned anything about that. All you mentioned was something within Cainesville and the airport. So if you're going to make statements like that, let's look at the whole picture. As was stated tonight, and as what's in the minutes, it is a proposal. There's nothing in there stating that we're going to vote on this and we're going to do it tomorrow.
Mr. Mayor,
nothing in there.
Point of order. We're not.
Councillor Miller, please.
Mr.
Point
Mayor,
of order.
if we're not debating presenters, okay, we ask questions for clarification. That's it.
Yes.
So if there's a question, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, please stop debating presenters. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, noticed, we shall stop debating. Councillor well, I'm premature calling you a counselor, aren't I? But Dr. Haley, have you completed your
Yes, thank you.
presentation?
Oh, I think there's a question.
Any other question of Dr. Haley? Councillor Wheat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, I have two questions. Number one, as a point of clarification, at the start of your presentation, did I hear you say you're not opposed to growth?
I said I support smart growth.
No, you didn't use the word smart. You said, I heard you say you are not opposed to growth.
I did not say that. I said I support places to grow and smart growth.
That's not the way you felt a few
Well,
years.
let's listen to the tape again.
Please, I have the floor right now.
Okay.
I didn't
I know, but we
interrupt you.
cannot debate. We cannot debate in council.
That's
It's
a
not
different
allowed.
stand that you had a few years ago because you were opposed to growth. Now, my second question,
Yes, sir.
you talked about open consultation and involving the public. I can recall, thank you.
I'm sorry, it was not a Concerned Citizens of Brant meeting. I'm sorry, it was not. The Concerned Citizens of Brant people are here. I do support their efforts, but it was not a Concerned Citizens Brant. We did have a former councillor we had a former councillor, very disruptive. The only way that we could handle the meeting was for me to stand on a chair and say, can the people who are part of Sustainable Brant remain? And the meeting went outside. It was so disruptive.
Was that disruptive, Councillor, either myself or Mr. Eddy?
No.
No, thank you.
No.
Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, thank you so much for this. I was at the Works Committee when this consultation was presented. Really knocked off my chair almost too. We're exorbitant for a county of our size to absorb, but it was only a consultation at that point in time. And if you recall, when we annexed the land to Brantford, the city of Brantford, in that agreement on our side, our CEO negotiated that we have a joint services group form to talk about the servicing, joint servicing in the airport area and Cairnsville, because those could be future growth areas, to take heat off of St. George and Paris. I didn't hear any complaints at that time. This is a concept that this consultant has brought back. It is nothing more than that. There's been no public consultation because it's only come to the table. It came to the Works Department 2 weeks ago. So there is no public consultation at this point. There will be lots of public consultation. You're jumping the gun, I think, a bit, Ella. And you know what? It's really not fair to the taxpayers because they're hearing something that they shouldn't be hearing at this point in time. So my question to you is, are you in favor of growth in those two areas, the airport and Cairnsville? Are you in support of smart growth?
I need a public consultation on this. I've tried to read the document, had trouble getting it, finally got it this afternoon, and I need to have more time and consultation myself with this. When I look at the price tag, it scares me, and I need, as a ratepayer, I need more consultation on this.
Could I say back to you that this is a very preliminary situation that we're dealing with right now? This might not even happen. It's not carved in stone, and we're not approving anything tonight for the final approval. Nothing has happened except we've got prices from the consultant regarding the possible future work. That's where we're at right now. So I think you're pushing buttons to residents that shouldn't maybe be pushed at this time. That's my comments on it, so I just want to clarify that's where we are right at the moment.
Okay. You're mentioning, just in reply to you about the annexation, that there was no comments at the time. We presented thousands of names on petitions to protect that blue belt.
If I could recall, I think you presented for Tulip Heights.
No, we had 3,000 signatures.
Anyway, I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we're trying to make our county of Brant complete. That's what we're trying to do, and to make it better in all areas, including the airport and including Cairnsville. And if we can do it with the support of Brantford, kudos to us.
At what price?
We don't know. This is a consultant's report, and you know, Alla, what consultant's reports are. That's all they are, is a bunch of figures at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman, do you wish to speak? Question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
This is more a comment than a question. This is a comment. This is a proposal that is being brought forward to the night. Simply a proposal. A proposal to improve infrastructure ways in the Kanesville and the airport area when possible. Not all to be done in the next year. This will be done over years. We also have a whole whack of industries in the Kanesville area that are on holding tanks.
Thank you for that information.
Holding tanks. Is that good for the environment? No. We have a chance to improve the infrastructure in Kanesville and possibly make things much better in the airport area over time. Simply a proposal. And when proposals come forward, then consultation will take place later. But I want to make sure the consultation also includes the business owners that are sitting there with holding tanks, because I'm getting tired of the calls that want to know when the hell we can move forward and get on proper sewers.
I completely support you on fixing the holding tanks. I completely support you. I know about the overflow of the holding tanks into the creek. So it's just, I spoke to phase 2, especially. That's about $50 million. That's a huge, huge price tag. And so I'm looking at the whole thing here. I know often, sometimes a consultant's report later on becomes the Bible. So I'm just trying to look at it right now. It only came in August when a lot of you are busy haying or on holidays. I don't know how many of you had a lot of time to look at this and the appendix. And so I'm just asking the careful question, are we taking precautions before we jump? Are we jumping too soon? Are we looking at the price tag?
Councillor Gatler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegation. As you know, the development in Kanesville is mainly commercial and industrial, and the purpose of extending the servicing in the Kanesville area is so that we can develop more industry, which helps keep the taxes down for residential properties. As you know, I'm sure they pay at a higher rate of taxes, and I want to know if you're opposed to reducing residential taxes by having additional industry in Kanesville.
Okay, thank you for that question. I remember Brantford. I spoke to Councillor Newman, and he said that the land, I think just north of the Linden Park Mall, was zoned employment land. And it's so easy if you watch an official plan. I mean, the golden egg is we're going to zone it, we're going to designate it in the official plan employment land, and then they come back and they say, oops, we're not finding jobs. You know, Brantford can't seem to attract jobs. So can we rezone it to residential? So that's my worry when I look at the south part of the development there. I'm asking you, what jobs? I mean, it sounds lovely and ambitious and it's great, but what jobs? Because look at our unemployment rate.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may respond, we developed the 403 Business Park in much quicker time than we expected. What jobs? We have the highest job creation rate around in this area. We brought many good paying jobs to the Brant 403 Business Park, and as far as I'm concerned, Brant County can do the same at the airport and the Kanesville area. Thank you.
Okay. Will it be a race to the bottom, though? Will we have lower development charges and lower taxes so that Adidas moves from Brantford to Brant? Is that creating jobs?
Excuse me, Your Worship, point of order. We're debating again. I think we need to stop debating. Thank you.
Would you complete your
I'm done.
presentation
Thank you.
if there is any
Thank you.
more? And if so, Dr. Haley, thank you for your presentation. And it will be discussed later with the all delegations. So thank you. And next is Cam Johnson of Millards, who will present our 2017 financial statements, voluminous somewhat. But before that, there is a management report signed by Michael Bradley, CAO, and Heather Mifflin, Director of Finance and Treasurer, and they will no doubt wish to comment. Councillor Carty.
Your Worship, are these reports available on the web to the public as well if they wish to choose to see them?
They always always are.
Thank you, sir. Just want to make it clear. Thank
They
you.
always have been. I don't know, I can't tell you how soon they'll be there, but maybe I can work on that later tonight. No, I'll inquire about that. Pam, welcome. Do the other two people wish to speak?
Your worship, Mr. Johnson has his presentation for council as the auditor to confirm our financial
But
statements.
there is a letter of management report. Do you wish to comment on that?
The letter is straightforward, your
Thank
worship.
you.
It supports the conclusions of our
Welcome,
audit.
Pam. Sorry to hold you up. It's late. A little later than usual, but welcome.
Thank you,
Please
sir.
proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Cameron Johnston. I'm a partner with Millard Ross, Roseboro, and Brantford, and it's my pleasure tonight to present the consolidated audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2017. If I may, the one report that was just handed out tonight, this is almost identical to last year. This is a public document that Heather has that can be displayed publicly, and it just highlights a couple of quick points related to the audit. Page 1 of the report is just a brief introduction as to our reporting to council and to the members. Page 2 highlights the independent auditor's report, which we'll see in the audited financial statement. Page 3 is our statement of independence. One of the things that we do have to adhere to is we have to adhere to our ethics, and one of our ethical requirements is that we do remain independent of the County of Brant, and this just states that we are independent and we confirm our independence to the county. Responsibility of management on page 4 highlights the responsibilities of management. These are management's financial statements. Our report that we do is we attach the auditor's opinion to these financial statements, and this highlights this point. And also management's representations throughout the course of the audit. We do receive representations from management, and at the conclusion of the audit we also receive a management letter from management. A couple of reportable matters on page 5 highlight significant accounting principles and policies. As discussed each year, if you want to change the numbers to a set of financial statements, change an accounting policy, and they can have significant material impacts on financial statements. One of our jobs is as the auditor is to make sure that the policies that are put into place for accounting policies are done on a reasonable basis, that they do meet the requirements of what the intent is, and then also if a policy is changed, it is done on a retrospective basis. So you can't manipulate the current year with previous year's adjustments. So that's very, very important. One of the things that we do highlight in this letter is that there were no significant changes to accounting policies in the year. So the presentation of the financial statements are done on a consistent basis to that of last year and the previous year. I've not noted any significant unusual transactions. The boundary adjustment that is reflected in the financial statements is maybe a significant adjustment or transaction, but it's not an unusual one, so that's why it's highlighted there. Materiality is a number that we use as auditors to plan our audit and to perform the work that is done. Materiality gives us a bit of a guideline. If we didn't have a level of materiality, we would still be doing the audit. We would be looking at numbers way too small. So this is based on a planning level, and then we also take a look at materiality and look at differences. And the key example with differences is when Heather's doing her work, she cuts off accounts payable February 28th. Well, we're the auditors and we're coming in April and March and April, or even May. We can take a look at an invoice that was received well after year end and look at it and saying, well, it belongs to 2017. That is, we may consider that to be a difference, and we'll look at those differences. And if those differences become material, then we have to address them with management and make a request for change to the financial statements. That highlights this area, material misstatements and significant audit adjustments. We highlight that throughout the course of the audit, we don't have any significant audit adjustments. When we work with Heather throughout the audit, there may be 1 or 2 adjustments. Most of the adjustments are made with the client. There was no significant differences, and even our unadjusted differences this year were well below materiality. And we consider that. We had a difference with the financial statements on a consolidated basis at the end of the year. With one dollar amount, there was an adjustment going one way of about $100,000. There was adjustment going the other way of slightly less than $100,000. So at the end of the day, we ended up with a summary of unadjusted differences of around $16,000. Internal controls, we report on page 6. Internal controls related to the audit is that we test the controls that are in place each year, and throughout the audit we did not discover any significant deficiencies in the internal controls or significant differences in how they're supposed to be acting. No issues related to fraud or illegal acts, and we'd like to report through Heather Mifflin and her staff that we received excellent cooperation throughout the course of the audit. Any inquiries that we had, we received all the information that we wanted. There was no limitations on our scope of the audit. Couple of quick points on the very last page. Page 7 is just some future items, and the one that sort of stands out a little bit is asset retirement obligations. That's similar to a gas station, for example. If you put in a gas station, you have to consider the cost to remove that gas station at the end of its life. Well, coming up in two, if I can ask if there's any questions related to that statement, that report? No, perfect. If I can bring your attention then to the page 2 of the audited financial statements, the independent auditors report. I'll suspend with the middle part. I'll just read the opening paragraph in the opinion, if that's okay. And it's, you can see we've audited the accompanying consolidated financial statements of the Corporation of the County of Brant, which comprise the consolidated statement of financial position as at December 31, 2017, consolidated statements of operations and accumulated surplus, changes in net financial assets and cash flows for the year then ended, and information. Next paragraph highlights management responsibility, auditors' responsibilities. In the opinion paragraph, it's, in our opinion, the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Corporation of the County of Brant as at December 31, 2017, and the consolidated results of its operations and changes in net financial assets and its consolidated cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Signed, Millard Russ Roseborough LLP, Chartered Professional Accountants, Licensed Professional Accountants, dated August 23, 2018. If I may just highlight a couple of points on page 3. This is our consolidated statement of financial position, or the balance sheet. This represents our assets and liabilities. These statements, as I bring to your attention each year, these are now done on a full accrual basis, no different than any other business. They're not done on a cash in, cash out basis, so we always see a significant difference between our surplus number and the treasurer's surplus number that you follow on your budgets. And we see that in the statements primarily because of our tangible capital assets that are in here, plus other liabilities. But one of the numbers that does show up in the current year, you can see it highlights quite nicely, is our financial assets, cash and short-term investments. As council is aware that you took on some new financing this year, $12 million, I believe, of financing. You can see our cash position in the current year has gone from $1 million up to $16 million. Operational cash. Our investments have held fairly consistent, around $35 million. The big number is the receivable. You can see an accounts receivable boundary adjustment. This is relating to, again, the boundary adjustment with the City of Brantford. That $22 million was the total value. That's brought out 10 years, so it's actually discounted back to a net present value dollar, and that's about $20 million. And again, as council is aware, that's two components. That is a straight payment over 10 years, and then also a declining payment representative of the property taxes over 10 years. Right now, we're expecting a receivable of $20 million. You've received the first payment in January of 2018. The land inventory for sale highlights, next line is highlighting the Brant Business Park plus a couple of other tiny little properties. So overall, our total financial assets for the county, $84,979,000 compared to $52 million the year before. Liabilities that are in place are accounts payable. It represents year-end accounts payable, mostly a question of timing of any projects that are undertaken, et cetera, why there's a change in that. We have a couple of our full accrual differences. One of them is deferred revenues, obligatory reserve funds. So funds that you receive, development charges, et cetera, they have to be spent on a specific, in guidelines with the Development Charges Act. So that's why they're set up as a liability. It's not really your money It is money that ratepayers have paid you, for example, or funding. You've received funding for a project that is for a specific project, so it's an obligation, and that's why it's showing up here as a liability. Our future employment benefits, so our post-retirement benefits, et cetera, for members of staff, et cetera, you can see 1.6 million. Accrued interest on long-term liabilities and landfill closure and post-closure costs. Those are all full accrual type adjustments that we see on the financial statements. And then our net long-term liabilities, again, $12.8 million of new financing in the current year. So we've gone from 42 million up to $52 million after payments were made in the current year. Non-financial assets, the big number is our tangible capital assets. So this is the net book value of all the assets that the county has. And you can see that number is $258 million compared to $255 the year before. We actually spent in the current year, on a full accrual basis, almost identical to the year before. In 2016, we spent $19.4 million. This current year, we spent $19.3 million on tangible capital assets. Again, that's separate from the your capital fund that you have. That is items we can have capital expenditures that are expensed in the current year. We can also have regular operating expenditures that are capitalized in the current year. This is on a full accrual basis. So overall this year we have net financial assets, our assets minus our liabilities, of $5.4 million compared to a net financial debt the year before of $13.67 million. Very quickly, page 4 highlights our revenues and expenditures, again on a full accrual basis. So you can see our total revenue in the current year, $108 million compared to $86 million. The big difference again is the second line up from the bottom there is our boundary transfer compensation, $20,036,148. And our expenditures in the current year, total expenditures, $70,700,000 compared to $70,640,000 the year before. So overall, income after our amortization of our tangible capital assets, you can see our annual surplus from operations on a full accrual basis, $21.4 million compared to $3.5 million. And if we actually just pull out the boundary adjustment by itself, we've got an overall full accrual surplus of about $1.4 million. The actual, again, operating surplus at the end of the year was about $745,127 compared to $142,000 the year before. I'll suspend with the rest of the financial statement. It highlights the changes in our net financial assets. And then our consolidated statement of cash flows, which is always an interesting one. This shows our sources and uses of cash. And the notes to the statements have remained fairly consistent. We've added a note related to boundary adjustment, and then the very last page highlights our tangible capital assets that we have. So again, just out of interest, our total cost of our assets at the end of the year, tangible capital assets, $422,540,000. So getting close to $500 million worth of capital assets that the county has. I guess through your worship, may I ask if there's any questions related to these financial statements?
Thank you for your presentation, Cameron. Appreciate it. Questions by members of council, please. It's a big report. Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Cam, thank you so much for this. It's always interesting every year. I just would like to, I know the answer, I'm sure, but I just want a clarification so the public can understand this. On page 17, the accumulated surplus, the Paris Business Improvement Area, 16 it was 36.4, and this year it's 54,319. And I believe that's because all the bills were in and paid at the time that this report was put together. Is that correct?
We actually don't audit the Paris BIA. That is done by through staff. That's a report that's provided to them. That surplus would probably tie out to a question of not so much, shouldn't be timing. If the statements are prepared on a full accrual basis like they're supposed to be, It would be just a question of timing between maybe even a project that's being undertaken if they receive some funding in the current year and they didn't complete projects that weren't specific to that funding. So it could be even as, 2 years ago they bought some LED lights for Christmas. Last year they didn't have to buy any LED lights and they had the funding in place, or they're going to expand the lights, but they didn't do that until 2018.
Okay. Yeah. Okay,
that type of thing.
Thank you. Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Councillor Chambers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two questions through you to Cam. The first one, I'm just wondering if you know how many years you have been presenting the financial statements to this county.
I was around at amalgamation.
So you've been here
and
quite a while.
prior, when you were the or you were a councillor at one point somewhere else too, right? At Burford?
Yeah,
Yes.
we go back a long ways.
I was a student then.
So was I. My second question is my second question is probably more in the form of a question. In comparison to the other years,
Yes.
Looking at 2017, in terms of financial position of the county, is there any red flag that you'd like to throw up in comparison to the other years?
No, it's actually the opposite. If you recall, going back about 4 or 5 years, well, probably 5 years or so, at the beginning of the development going up West Acres Road, remember there was this massive cost related to that sewer line and everything going up there. And if I brought to the attention of council is that we have reserve funds, but you didn't actually have a dime of money for those reserve funds. So you had a wish list, and we see that wish list. It's in these financial statements now, reserves and reserve funds, but we didn't have any funding that was in place because it was all taken up with that primarily with that development. That was a huge strain. Financing has now been put in place to maintain those items. We look at financing now related to working capital. You have to have adequate funds in order to run your day-to-day operations. We're seeing that with the $16 million of cash right now. Yes. And then I still took a look at reserves. So reserves and reserve funds are around $59 million. Well, when we add up our cash and our investments, we've only got $51 million right now. So we're still shy. Plus, we also have responsibility for the deferred revenues of $4.4 million, again, which is theoretically not our money. It's money to be spent for specific projects. So we're still short of cash, but what I've been seeing is that it has been a significant improvement over the last 4 years in your cash that you've got in place. So that's an excellent direction to be moving. So,
Councillor Cardy.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. And I don't know if you're able to do this, but if we were compared to other municipalities of our size, there must be a ranking of how we stand or how we look, comparatively speaking, to those municipalities financially. There is a rating somewhere, I'm sure, on municipalities and funds and their availability of funds and how solvent they are.
Maybe Heather can answer that. I'm not sure if there is. Is there one with the ministry? Or is there?
They're supposed to keep us informed.
Your Worship, I can answer.
There used to be. You want to speak to it?
Your Worship, I can. We contribute every year to the it's the FIRS. It's a provincially mandated reporting system, and then we also, and you see the results of this during the budget process, the benchmarking initiative that BMA does, and we usually present those results. So we benchmark positively on a number of financial indicators. In terms of cost per capita, debt per capita, et cetera, and you'll see all those figures in the budget. So.
Councillor Chambers.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did have one final question before Councillor Cardy jumped in, and I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, that you said that during the last 4 years, the financial position of the county has improved considerably.
Yes, because of cash, primarily because of your cash position.
That should be a news release. Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Johnson.
Beautiful.
Quick question. The tangible capital assets, this is page 3 of our report, you're showing that they go up from 2016 to 2017 by about 3 million, sorry. Is that after those tangible capital assets that were part of the boundary negotiations went into the city? So we lost some? Yes? but we
Yeah,
also
actually,
gained some?
yeah, it's got a few components to that. First of all is we have, part of that number is the acquisition of tangible capital assets in the year, which is $12.6 million. With that, nope, sorry, acquisition was $19.3 million. And then the assets that you do have in place that you're using, we depreciate those, and that's depreciated by $12.6 million. So that's a drop in the tangible capital asset number. And then on top of that, as well as we've also recognized a loss on disposition of tangible capital assets in the year. There is a component of the loss, which is $4.2 million. There's a component related to regular dispositions of small assets, computer equipment, any road work that you're doing. If the road surface is not completely depreciated down to zero and it's being replaced, there's a loss on that disposition because you can't sell it. But a large chunk of that 4.2 million is the transfer of the land or of the linear assets and the assets that are over to the city. So the number itself, going from 258 up from 255 million, it comprises of all those components.
Well, that's interesting, despite the fact that we lost a big chunk. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? If not, thank you for bringing us such
Thank you.
the report tonight. We appreciate it. Now, we have two delegations left. William Murray, Brant, Responsible Growth and Development Working Group, and then a second one. And just before these presentations are made, recommendation presented in Corporate Development Committee later this evening that the mayor and Mr. Graver and staff convene a working group with membership to be determined at their discretion to develop an understanding of the community issues, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't know whether you were both aware of that recommendation that's coming forward for debate later. And I was very pleased to see that. But come forward, please, and please welcome, and please proceed when you're ready. We're pleased to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, councilors, Mr. Bradley. I guess I will be brief and obviously take any questions afterwards. At the most recent corporate development committee meeting, Councillor Chambers suggested this working group that just came up. Too late, etc. We have no issue with the idea of a working committee, and frankly, we just like to be participants in that. I believe some background might help. My purpose for being here is to ensure that council's aware that there is a natural diversity of opinions around what's going on with both the development and the EA and the growth that's happening and impacting the community. We're sort of shaping 21st century Paris as we go. I've jokingly said, and it sort of applies tonight, that I've often said that this ain't Mayberry anymore, and those who go back to the 60s remember that community that was sort of run around a coffee shop or the police station, and it's just about the comfort of low stress, small town living, and we're getting pressures now of places to grow and that sort of thing. I'm one of the organizers of an informal collaboration of people that got together last winter to bring forward concerns regarding the PG housing development. We named the group Brant Responsible Growth and Development, the BRGD, essentially because we needed a name to put on our Facebook group and the like that we were sharing. And I said, well, what's a meaningful lot across email? Some of you will recall a meeting on January 29th in this room when PG scheduled an open house in these chambers. One of our neighbors heard about this lightly publicized, if publicized event, and with a couple of friends went around the neighborhood from Paris Links over to Riverview and stuffed mailboxes with a little flyer saying, "This is what's going on, you should come out." And sort of we did, and we swamped this room, and you'll recall, and things there got a little heated as they started to get tonight. It's just, it's emotional for folks. I joke about things being not in people's backyards, and I'm not picking on Mr. Graber. We're all viewing our backyards and the like, and have that, but you got to look beyond that. What we did from that meeting, we gathered surreptitiously 45 email addresses and names and phone numbers and the like of people who were there, and that's from whence our little collaboration started. There's nothing incorporated about it or anything like that. We just worked together to try to support the people who were under the gun to get input into the LPAT and the OMB by a deadline only 2 months later. And we were all trying to figure out what the rules were. One of the things, what I did once we grew up to about 100 residents. Somewhere, I don't know how to count because some people are in both groups and spouses and that sort of thing. But somewhere around 100 people that have been participating in our group, and as a result, we had much increased participation in public information, the PIC meetings and open houses, etc., because we came out en masse. And Mr. Graber's folks are coming out en masse too, and don't blame them. I mean, they're concerned. We spent a lot of time helping the participants in the OMB, the LPAT. I'm not sure what to call it because it was an OMB thing carried over to LPAT, but helping those folks pull together the submissions that they had to make very formally in a very legal context to the LPAT. And on April 13th, once we had all these things put together, I sent an email out to all of you that attached those documents. I copied the expositor, etc. And we were seeking essentially to discuss our concerns and look at if we could collaborate. I got my knuckles wrapped. Anyway, Councillor Wheat and the mayor called me back, and unimpressively the expositor didn't. But Mr. Trotter called to ask me, and I'll never forget saying, "What on earth were you thinking?" And as we talked about it, I said, "This is a legal proceeding. Things are now in camera and that sort of thing, and you got to work to these rules." Okay, well, we got educated. We weren't really aware of that. But it was, as I say, an inauspicious start. Councillor Wheat was very helpful, and my conversation with Mr. Trotter did turn quite positive and constructive, and we sort of worked forward from there. As a result, our informal membership scrambling to contribute and play by the rules of the LPAT, because again, it's a legal process, enabled us to walk away feeling quite satisfied. I mean, obviously, we didn't get everything we'd hoped for, like the thing going away, but we contributed to the process. There were improvements, and we had folks contributed on environmental, water, sewage, brook trout, you name it. That were the issues that people tried to address and make sure that were accommodated as the plan was put together. And we thought we achieved a best possible result from that. And we were quite that, and I congratulated the lawyer at the end of the hearing. The members have also actively participated in the EA, the PICs and that sort of thing, and we've contributed our inputs to Mr. Taylor and the like, and we're all pretty much in favor, at least within our crew, of Alternative 6, with the exception pretty universally that no one likes a traffic circle in front of Telfer and by the high school, because you got kids with the earphones plugged in, and seniors who are trying to go for their walk, and they don't move very quickly. And you also have seniors driving at Telfer who pull out of Telfer and pulling into a traffic circle. They've never seen one, and someone's going to turn left instead of right. Now, the proposal now would have the exit from Telfer come out on the new road that's going up the rail line, and that's something actually Mr. Taylor and I yacked about at the information session, and I'm glad to see that's there. That moves those people away, and they're not pulling right into that darn thing. As they say, traffic circles in pedestrian dense areas aren't always very positive. So I'm just here to ensure your awareness that our group and the folks who participated in the LPAT and the like, we're not the same group. At the same time, I know we have a lot of folks who cross the two boundaries. And if I were, if Mr. Graber would welcome me, which he's not particularly, but if he would welcome me in, I'd be glad to contribute to the conversations going on in that group as well. Anyway, there have been a bunch of folks that signed this petition, and various folks that I know have done the same. Some just to make it go away, but others who just hoping that the project will go away or whatever. But we know that's not going to happen. So. Bottom line, we have no issue with having a working group. We'd love to participate in it, and we just wanted to make it clear that there's more than one voice here, and there's more than one set of opinions. It's not just the one. There were now 7 alternatives. We've looked at them all, and all of them should be looked at. And as with this one, how many people in that subdivision are going to want to drive up north to go south downtown? And what are those numbers? Because all of those people are going to end back up at Silver Street and Grand River. They're all going to end up back there. So it's nice to draw up these things, but there have to be some facts that sort of accompany it, and Mr. Taylor's pretty good at that. So that's all I had to say. We like to have a sort of a low-stress process of going through this. Let's have a rational discussion and arrive at the most rational conclusion. No, I can't do that. You could.
Mr. Murray, thank you for your comments, and be assured that your opinion does count.
Cool,
and you
thanks.
are welcome to attend things like that.
Cool.
As a citizen of this community, you're always welcome.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Chambers?
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, for clarification to Mr. Murray.
Sure.
The recommendation to form the working group is coming up later this evening.
Yes.
And just to be clear, if you are named to be a participant in that, you would be prepared to serve on the committee?
100%.
Thank you. Okay. Any other member, Councillor Weed?
Just a comment through you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Murray. Thank you for those kind words. I really didn't tell you what to do. I just gave you some direction.
Well, that's all we
I had
needed.
a comment one time, you'll get 100 phone calls, 99 will be negative. I just heard the one positive. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome, sir.
Anyone else? Councillor Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may make a comment, I wasn't too involved in that whole process, as you're aware. But I just want to say thank you for coming forward with an alternate thought and having a different outlook on the whole situation, because that's what makes a good working group really work. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I've tried to stay back and just let Mr. Graber's group do what they felt they needed to do. When it started talking about forming working group committees, et cetera, we thought, well, we should at least get our oar in the water.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask, because there's a lot of statements by the other group about lack of transparency, lack of communication. Do you share those sentiments? Do you see that? Or do you see how we can do better? Do you agree with it, or should we be doing better? What do you think?
I don't think there's anything deliberate about it. But what we found as we went through the process this winter and spring, that it was often very difficult to find the documents that we thought should be there, that we would subscribe to be on mailing lists or whatever on things, and we would or wouldn't get results from that with no clear reason. Sometimes I think it may be because the topic changes and you're not subscribed to the list under that topic name. I'm not sure. There's a lot of ways to technologically that can be done. And then of course there's just going beyond technology, because as Mr. Graber mentioned, not everybody's using technology. And so sometimes a flyer in the mailbox is a better way for some folks to at least get them involved, let them know at least.
I appreciate it.
That's fair ball.
Any other questions? If not, thank you for
Cool.
your
Thanks very much.
presentation. Very encouraging. The next is Rick O'Brien, Working Group Re Grand River Street North Environmental Assessment. Welcome. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thanks. And make sure you speak in the mic.
Okay, thanks for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I was afraid I was going to be controversial, but upstaged. I'm glad some people stayed around.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that I was trying to provide some information tonight that might have helped. How did I end up speaking to you tonight? You know, why am I here? Well, about a year ago, I remember reading in the paper about the development happening in the former golf course. And the thing that struck me, and we talked about it over supper, was the elongated roundabout, which I had never heard of one of these before, and it piqued my curiosity. And a few months later, the first community cafe was arranged out at the fairgrounds, and I was one of the first registrants. I showed up, and there were 28 people scheduled to attend, and I think about 128 showed up. So it could have seemed somewhat disjointed, but I remember hearing at the time that the developers had, in addition to abandoned railway property shown in Exhibit 6.3 that would need to be acquired, there are 7 houses along Paris Links Road with direct frontage, and at least the 2 most westerly homes would likely need to be acquired and demolished to facilitate a realignment designed to typical road design standards. Substandard design treatments may reduce property impacts, but at the cost of road design speeds and safety. And I communicated with Mr. Taylor about this. I asked him, and at the time, by the way, the elongated roundabout was considered the preferred option. When I heard that already, and if people aren't aware of this process, in effect, the county had already approved the development based on a few adjustments that needed to be made. There's, well, more than a few. The developer was complaining about the 100+ things that needed to be done. And we were allowed a chance to become participants. I don't know if anybody remembers this. This was on the front page of the paper back in February. Housing plan raises worries, and it gave me a chance to become a participant in the process. And I showed up here in the council chambers last February, I think it was the 16th, and I was awarded participant status based on my concerns about, number one, the environmental assessment not being completed yet, and the possible demolition of my neighbors' homes. So this document that I've got here was a document I never got to use. It was created for the mediation process that happened in May, and we'll talk about why I didn't get to use it later. Just an overview for people that aren't familiar with the area. Yes. This is the problem area right here. Yes. I think Mr. Graber lives right on the bend here, and you can't see but the ghostly outline of the abandoned rail line runs behind these homes. I think you saw a more detailed version earlier. The ideal thing, as the consultant said, would be to just bulldoze these 7 houses and put the road straight through. And that would be to accommodate the 700 plus homes, many of which with 2-car garages, that are going in just down Paris Links Road. There were already problems with traffic at the corner. Its left turn is very difficult there if you've tried it. There's also problems here with Telfer Place. They have one entrance exit there and another seldom used one here. And these are the very deep, I don't know, these lots must be 600, 500 feet deep off of Bradbury Crescent, backing onto the Scout Guide, or the Girl Guide Road, going to Camp Tekka. So that's sort of the background. These were some of the quotes I had to use from the other participants, and this was someone advocating for the county, Mr. Davidson, that the finalization of the EA had to happen before the development could go ahead, or the development could be modified. So, you know, I was in agreement with that. This was also somebody advocating for the county, Mr. Fournier, that the existing plan that the developer was proposing would eliminate certain options for the transportation network. And you'll see that in some upcoming slides. These were some of the issues that were of concern, and numbers 2 and 4 were of particular concern to me: access to residential, commercial, industrial land use, and property impacts to residents and businesses. So some of the realignment options, and once again, remember, this was Paris Grants Estates is going ahead. It's on a timetable, but it's going ahead. Sooner or later, those 700 plus homes are going to need a way to get downtown, get to work in Hamilton, whatever. So the realignment options proposed were the elongated roundabout, or to realign Paris Links Road with Silver Street. So this was one of there's been a few. There was sort of a kidney bean one, there was an hourglass shaped one, but this was the elongated roundabout. The Gospel Church is in trouble.
Yes.
One of my neighbors, Pete, I guess he's going to have to put his house up for sale. And access over here to the south parking lot to Telfer Place is completely gone. And this island up the middle makes Telfer Place basically northbound only. I don't know how you'd go back downtown. I guess go up to Canadian Tire and do a U-E or something. And the parking lot and access for the lumber store is in trouble too. You'd have to come from the north to get in. I don't know how somebody down on Silver Street could stop in and get a couple of 2x4s. So anyway, that was the elongated roundabout that I had so many problems with. Negative effects, loss of access and property value. I took some pictures of the houses. This is on the southeast corner. I don't know these people. This place here they tried to sell it for $650,000, and I think they had to drop the price almost $100,000 to sell it. And they left. They left town over this possible encroachment on their property. My neighbor Pete's place, I guess, might be one of the last looks at it if they go with the elongated roundabout. And the church, also history. The lumber yard would be affected. I tried to contact the people from Telfer Place. The guy I talked to admitted he'd walked around the property once. I think he was from Mississauga or something. They were concerned but never got back to me. So, I had a telephone conversation with them, that was it. Now, these were some of the other alternatives, and, the controversial alternative 6 was the 6th of a number. This first one here, and by the way, this is important, these little pink circles, I guess that's mauve, isn't it? Anyway, potential property acquisition. It's kind of a euphemism. These are the elongated roundabout scenario, 4 of them there, right, that we looked at already. So that was alternative 1 that I wasn't happy with. This was a design for a signalized intersection using the right-of-way that Mr. Graber's hot about. Properties along Paris Links Road, loss of value or expropriation. So I took some pictures last winter. There's 7 of them. Anybody live in these? Okay. So anyway, all of these alternatives, the ones that I've shown you so far, featured Paris Links Road through Grand River Estates unaltered. In other words, just continuing through the development and heading on towards Grand River Street North. So here's another one. This was a sort of a dipsy doodle, four of them. This was another 4 homes, sort of a slight bend in Paris Links Road. This was one going up the railway right-of-way and through 2 homes. And this is the one that I sort of liked. Yes. Went up the right-of-way and down. So, and this was the very controversial, apparently, alternative 6. Should take a look at some of these if you're not familiar with it. The bridge, the much sought after, hoped for bridge at Green Lane. I've heard estimates $30 to $70 million and perhaps a decade or more away. And one of the issues with it, if you've hiked this trail up here like we have many times, Green Lane is quite a bit higher on this bank than the opposite bank of the river, meaning the bridge would be like a ski jump. It would have to cross over Paris Links Road and keep going. So this future bypass and the bridge, for now, you can effectively forget about it, unless, we're planning 10, 15 years out. Likewise, this controversial collector road, because without the bridge and this intersection here, this collector road does nothing. It's a road to nowhere.
Right. No.
This road here was the one that I heard as the so-called wild suggestion at that meeting on December 7th. Under study, I think when they study, they'll find it goes through some land that the county doesn't own and also through a wellhead protection area. You may remember that just outside Sobeys there's some gates and some water wells there. So, a truckload of oil spills and we're Walkerton, right? So this right here is the controversial area, the one that's got everybody so hot and bothered. This stretch of rail line and this little dip in the road. By the way, some of my other participants at this mediation session were residents of Bailey Drive that were sick of people cutting down their street to avoid the backup, trying to turn left at the end of Paris Links Road. And this little dip, excuse me, was suggested to discourage people continuing down here.
That's right.
Yes, we have.
I think we're over our time.
Yeah, we are over the time
And I thought the
allotted.
delegation was going to talk about the working group, and that's what.
How
I
much
haven't heard yet.
time do you expect? Would you
I
like to
can
complete?
zip through here in a couple minutes. Is that sufficient? I'll
Couple
cut down the
minutes.
verbiage and just show
Couple
the slides. How's that?
Couple minutes only?
Yeah, so these figures are much easier to work. You can do these in your head, unlike the accountant. Average taxes, 3,000. Average home acquisition, 450,000. To acquire one home, to expropriate one home, the total taxes for the year are from 150 houses. For the 4 homes, 600 houses, total taxes. So that was my take on it. The no demolition alternatives, 5 and 6, use the right-of-way, and it starts here. That's the property affected by the no demolition realignment, the very end of the property. This was the problem, and if I can just take a second, the revised plans for the developer, this is Paris Links Road here, and the rail line, blocked off access to the railway right-of-way. They put a crescent in there. So my solution was, and I'll skip this, go back to the original plan. This was the original plan that showed that so-called Y road and going onto the railway right-of-way. And I wasn't around for the hearing, but I was quite pleased to hear that the developer had actually modified their plans back to this. And I thought, my neighbors' homes are saved, you know, right? Well, now that all seems to be thrown into disarray, and I don't really know what to do about it, but that's how I arrived at this. Questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Is there any question? Councillor Miller.
Well, yeah, very quickly, were you also interested in being part of that working group?
Oh, definitely. I think, you know, I can use the experience I had from the being part of the OMB LPAT process. And
By the way, great presentation. You did a really nice job of summarizing it.
thank you. Anything else?
I have to advise, to defend the old council, County of Brant, the green lane was lowered some over 20 feet. Not to the river, but knowing that when it proceeded across the river, the balance would be lowered. So it would be a level bridge rather than because of complaints. But thank you very much for your tremendous
thank you.
information. We appreciate it, and we'll be looking at that resolution very soon. So thank you very much. That completes the list of presentations which we have before us this evening. So if we go back to A is received with great appreciation. We have recognized that. B is recognized as the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Thank goodness. Public hearing, no action. D, the first is item D, Deborah Andre. Councillor Coleman, pardon?
Refer to the CDC.
CDC, is there seconder? Councillor Pierce, all in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you. Mr. Graber, can we deal with Mr. Graber, Mr. Murray, and Mr. O'Brien in a package, or do you wish to deal with them separately? Mr. Councillor Miller?
I was just going to refer it to the CDC as well.
We will refer it to them. Thanks. Second, all in favor? Okay, then we have to back up to Dr. Haley. Councillor.
I'll refer that one to the Public Works report coming up.
What are you going to do with it?
I'm going to refer it to the Public Works report coming up later.
Referred to Public Works?
There's
seconder?
Yeah.
No seconder?
There's a number 2.
Pardon?
There's number 2 on the Public Works report, Mr. Mayor.
that deals with the issue.
It's there, thank you. Okay, so that's received then at this time, or referred to that item? Is that what you're saying? You agree with that? Agreed, thank you. And then, Mr. Johnson, of course, report is received and referred to staff.
Moretti, there is a resolution out there on the financial statements.
To do with it, who has that resolution? Out there someplace? Oh. Please. Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was moved by Councillor Simons and seconded by myself that 4G's 2017 financial statement, that the report to the members of the Brant County Council and the consolidated financial statement of the year ending December 31st, 2017 be received as information.
Thank you.
Would you agree with the resolution?
I absolutely do.
Thank you. Discussion, all in favor, opposed, carried. Cam Johnson, and that completes the list in my list. Is that correct? We're over the page, so we need to do adoption of minutes from previous meetings, please.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, having Brant Council minutes of July 24th, August 7th, and August 13th, 2018.
Moved and seconded. Any questions about the minutes? None. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising from the minutes, requests from concerned citizens of Brant, M. Bradley. Does someone have a resolution?
No, there's no resolution out there.
Is that the there's the recommendation. Who's presenting the recommendation?
Your Worship, it's an information report only. It was in response to a letter that was received from the CCOB, I believe, the June council meeting, and it is for information report only. I believe that the matter was addressed. Maybe the clerk could provide us how the matter was addressed at that June meeting.
Do we have a mover and seconder? Well, it's a recommendation. How is it dealt with?
No. There's no recommendation on this report. Okay.
It's this one here. That's another one.
Oh, we're dealing with 6A. Well, not wanting to prolong it, so it's received. Who said that? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, 7A, then I'm in the right pew now. Is there a recommendation there? Councillor Chambers. Thank you. Questions by any member of council? None? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Consent items to be received. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's to be received. And next, consent items to be received from the circulation file, 1 to 11. Any member of council wish any one of those pulled from the list? If not, we're dealing the entire list. Councillor Miller.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Chambers, that the consent items be received as information.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to committee reports. Planning Advisory Committee report from August the 7th.
It's moved by myself, second by Councillor Miller, that the Planning Advisory Committee report of August 7th be approved.
Questions of the chair? Members of council? None? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Community Services Committee report.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the Community Service Committee report of August 13th be approved, noting there are 4 recommendations.
Questions of the chair by members of council? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, through you to the chair. On page 4 of the minutes, the page 3, fire chief update, he states there's going to be emergency management training exercise in November. I would like to know what the date and time of that emergency training exercise is. And I'd also like to know if council members could attend as observers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, there was no specific date set at that time. I will follow up with the chief to see if that has been done. And
on this particular exercise, and I think we should be. So thank you.
yeah, I'll follow up with the chief and get back to council.
No, wrong minutes.
Oh, that, committee meeting? Is that what it is? Is that what we're talking about? Yes. Committee meeting? And the answer is?
The chief to confirm that and to follow up to see if we are able to attend as observers. And
Thank
I will
you.
get back to
Back to the
council.
Community Services Report Committee, committee report rather, by members of council. Anyone? Question? None? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we're on to corporate development.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to declare...
Pardon?
I'm going to declare a conflict on the corporate development because there was an item where I declared a conflict. When it was discussed, I'm declaring again.
Thank you. Councillor Wheat declaring a conflict and withdrawing from the chamber. And that's number...
Worship?
I will have to declare on that too.
Councillor Schmidt declaring a conflict. And do you have the reason for the conflict? Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Mayor, why don't we do it this way? I would request that recommendation number 5 be separated from the report, and that recommendation number 1 be separated from the report. By separating number 5, that allows Councillors Wheaton and Schmidt to take part in the discussion of the other items, and obviously there may be some amendments to recommendation number 1.
So recommendation number 5, remove from the report at this time.
And number 1.
The ballot, pardon, and number 1 and 1. 1 and 5 removed, so we're dealing with the balance of the report.
Or get number 5 first.
Pardon? What did you say?
Your Worship, if you do number 5 first, that is the item that...
No, I can't do that. I have to deal with 1 first.
Okay, well, then I'll bring them back in.
Oh, fine. 1 comes before 5.
We haven't even announced it yet.
They don't mind going in and out.
Announced it.
Councillor Schmidt, we're dealing with recommendation number 1, which has been separated from the report. And Councillor Wheat, we're dealing with recommendation number 1 first. Okay, that's before council. Councillor Chambers.
Speaking to recommendation number 1, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to propose an amendment.
Yes.
And that amendment would be that after the words Mr. Grabner, to add the words Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Murray.
Moved and seconded that an amendment to recommendation number 1. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Recommendation number 1 as amended. The addition, Councillor Chambers.
And again, Mr. Mayor, speaking to the recommendation as amended, I think the purpose of the recommendation is basically just to encapsulate what happened at the Corporate Services Committee with the amendment obviously in place. The recommendation is basically threefold, and it's important to understand what the working group is in charge to do, and that would be, number one, to develop an understanding of the issues concerning the development. There's a lot of confusion surrounding what actually is going on, and we've had some education given this evening. So the first thing is to develop an understanding of the issues. The second component is to develop a communication strategy so that this understanding can be gotten by the residents and the people that are interested in what's going on. So the second component, to develop a communication strategy to communicate what the understanding is. And thirdly, to develop a decision package on how to move forward, and that's if there's any action required from council concerning what comes out of the working group, then that decision-making package would be developed. So three components: develop an understanding, develop a way to communicate it, and if there's any action required by council, to make recommendations for that.
So that is the second amendment?
No, that's just my speaking to the recommendation to basically form the working group.
So we don't need to add that as an amendment, but it will
as Mr. Mayor, as mover of the recommendation, that is my synopsis of the intent of that recommendation.
So there's one amendment, and the motion as amended is now required. You have the additional verbiage.
Yes.
You have that.
Yep.
And that's added as additional information.
Yeah, that's just context, what Councillor Chambers has provided. It's not part of the recommendation.
Everyone, Councillor Cardy.
And maybe thinking to add the parish councillors into this because they're heavily involved in this process as well. I'm wondering if that would not be a good idea as well. Thank you.
Yes, I tend to think that's automatic.
Could I speak to that issue? Looking at the recommendation as I formed it, it says that Mayor Eddy, Mr. Grabner, Mr. O'Brien, and Mr. Murray and staff convene a working group with membership to be determined at their discretion.
That's still there.
Now, there's a little bit of craftiness in that section, in that all parties have to agree on who's going to be in the working group. And if the mayor, and I think you've stated that you feel that the parish councillors may be a valuable part of that group, well, that's fine. And then that goes forward, and I can't see why anybody wouldn't agree with that. And there you go. There's the formation of the working group. I would caution, however, that any working group, the larger you make it, the more difficult it is to arrive at consensus and action. So a fine working group would be, in my mind, and the recommendation says it's at the discretion of the mayor, Mr. Grabner, Mr. O'Brien, and Mr. Murray, that parish councillors, the appropriate experts, the appropriate staff, and anybody else that they feel that would be valuable to the process. The purpose of the working group is to basically stop pointing fingers, stop looking at ways to be combative, and start looking at ways to work at the situation together as a council and a community.
And it's a working group, it's the terminology, which is good. Okay, satisfactory? Anyone else have a problem? So have we passed the motion as amended?
No, I believe Councillor Cardy actually has the motion. He can present.
He has another motion?
No, for the recommendation number 1, he's going to present the recommendation, and then it's as amended, which we've already approved the amendment.
Recommendation number 1, that Mayor Eddie, Mr. Graber, and staff convene a working group with membership to be determined at their discretion to develop an understanding of the community issues and the status of the environmental assessment project, a decision package to move forward, and a communications strategy.
You left off Mr. Murray and Mr.
That's already.
Yeah, and who's the seconder?
Councillor Simons.
Councillor Simons. So it's moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Simons, the motion as amended.
This isn't a second amendment? No. In this case, okay, as amended. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Then we will deal with the balance of the report, with the exception of recommendation number 5, and of course, recommendation number 1 that's been approved. So, stay for this. Any questions by member of council regarding 2, 3, 4, etc.? Everything except 5. Councillor Cardy.
As was stated, Your Worship, in our meeting in August 13th regarding the CN
oh, yes.
safe operation, I think it's important to let the community know throughout all of that, that the County of Brant support National Public Railway Safety Week to be held from September 23rd to the 29th, and that staff be directed to prepare a resolution regarding ongoing pedestrian safety concerns at the Dundas Street East overpass for consideration by the Public Works Committee.
Correct. Yes. So, Councillor Gatward.
And if we're going to approve the report, I have a question regarding the minutes.
Regarding what?
Regarding the Corporate Development Committee minutes.
You had a question.
I have a question, yes.
No, but you had one. You had a second? Or was that a different?
No, it's regarding something totally different.
Please proceed. Well, just a moment.
We can do the report first, and then I just didn't want to not get the opportunity.
Does it have to do with any of the recommendations that are listed?
No.
No. Can we deal with those?
Yes.
We have a mover and seconder. Yes, we do. All in favor, opposed, carried. Now, number 5. Thank you. Removing or to avoid a conflict of interest. Thank you. And that's moved and seconded as well. Stands.
Item number 5, Your Worship.
Yeah, that stands, that recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Discussion. Any question by any member of council regarding recommendation number 5? No one? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Gatward, minutes of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon?
Someone want to go get them again?
Oh, yes, important.
My question is with respect to page 2 of the CDC minutes, and we had a delegation named Brad Totten who was requesting relief from site alteration permit requirements, and staff was requested to work with Mr. Totten, and I'm wondering through you to staff if the matter has been resolved. And I believe it was directed to the General Manager of Development Services at the time.
Mark Maloney was asked to work with Mr. Totten, so he might have the answer.
So what is the question?
The question is, has the matter been resolved that Mr. Totten was concerned about, and we referred him to staff to work with him?
Oh, right. Yes.
So I'm looking for an answer if it's been resolved or not.
You want an answer tonight? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Palponi, are you clear on what's being asked?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We did meet with Mr. Totten, and we came in and explained the processes through the site alteration bylaw, gave him some options. The process does apply. And just to give some information to council, there isn't an appeal mechanism unless the application is refused. We stated that the fees are in accordance with the bylaw, and they could come back and request a reduction of the fees or an elimination of the fees if they choose to. And that's where we left it, and we haven't heard back from them in about a week or so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Received. No action to be taken. Public Works Committee report.
Mayor, move on myself, second by Councilor Miller, the Public Works Committee report from August 14, 2018 be approved, noting there is 5 recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Questions of the chair? Councilor Miller.
Just on number 2.
Number 2?
And that's the servicing. That's how I see it anyways.
So your request is?
Just a point of clarification, that was all.
Pardon?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. That when it comes to down to the EA, that's
no action. No action to recommend it? Anyone else? Councillor Chambers, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the clarification that Councillor Miller and the chairman have given. Essentially, the
carried, and that takes us on now to staff reports.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Coleman.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Coleman, that the council and citizen appointments to committees, and the process is 3 steps there listed that I don't believe I need to read. It's on your agenda. Be approved.
Questions of the presenter? Anyone? No questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we're on to 2017 surplus. Must be a hot subject.
Yeah.
Councillor Coleman.
Mayor, I have a resolution moved by myself, second by Councillor Chambers, that the 2017 surplus of $745,127 be directed to the property reserve for expected upcoming property purchases.
Thank you. Questions of the presenter by any member council? Councillor Miller.
Not a question, just I'd like to speak to it, and that would be that.
Speak to it?
Yes. I'll be voting against that motion from staff. I would rather, if we need money for the reserves for upcoming property purchases, that be referred to the 2019 budget, and that the surpluses be returned. Well, the reason I'm voting against it is because I would rather see that money returned to the people that paid it in the first place. So that's why I'm going to vote against it. And if it is defeated, I will certainly be prepared to present a new motion.
Pardon?
It was my idea. I can speak to it if you like.
Do you wish to comment on it? Or not?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll certainly take I've had several people ask today about the recommendation to fund it from the property reserve, and the mayor said I could speak to it. My reasoning for that is that property reserves property acquisitions tend to pop up in mid-budget, and having a healthy property reserve, I feel, in our high growth situation here in the county is important, because what we're seeing, and I think we've seen it as development happens, the opportunity to acquire property also happens. They tend to dovetail, and they tend to come suddenly and without a lot of warning. And we don't have any money currently in the property reserve, and I felt that it was a good of any of the reserves that should have some funding in it at this period in our history, now would be the time. Again, because as development happens and growth happens, these opportunities to acquire property for various municipal purposes, parkland, infrastructure, there's a number of community center discussions going on, and all of them will likely require property acquisition, and we should have money in the property reserve. I do agree that ideally we would put those acquisitions in the budget, but property acquisitions, they tend to be, opportunistic. So that's our reasoning, but again, we certainly...
In order for it to be used in any way, it needs a resolution of this council to deal with it.
And I just want to thank the CAO for that
Yes.
response, and don't take it personal.
Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I just heard that we have very little in our property reserve, but I asked how much we have in there, and I can't seem to get a number. Can you give me some idea of what is in there? I know what the contingency reserve is, because the treasurer gave me that earlier today, and we have $1 million in that reserve. So I'm looking for a number, because I don't fully support the whole 730 some odd thousand going to property. I think that money came from all of the taxpayers in the county, and at least half of it should go back to lowering the taxes for the 2019 budget. That's my opinion. Maybe half for the property reserve and half for the taxpayers. That's my opinion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Your Worship, in answer to the question, the property reserve is fully depleted, so there's nothing in it.
There's nothing in it now. Okay.
I think that was stated. Anyone else? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious if Councillor Gatward is still thinking the same now that we understand that there's zero in there. Are you still thinking that only half of it should go in?
I don't want to make a snap decision. That's it's over a 1% tax increase decision, and I feel that we continue to have surpluses, although we're not quite as lucky as Six Nations, and theirs was over $2 million. But it bothers me when we raise all this money for projects and then they don't get done. And then we still want to add more to the next budget. That's all I'm saying. I know we were in a growth period, as the CAO has said. However, when we spend that money on property, I guess it depends on the project, whether it will benefit all the residents in the county, because all the residents in the county contributed to that 700 and some odd thousand dollars.
Yes. Well,
that's my...
We would have to analyze much deeper. That could be the subject of a book. Anyway, it's not being spent. It's being put into a reserve, which means it's there listed, and until it needs a motion to disperse any part of it.
And so, I do suppose, Mr. Mayor, in looking at the big picture, if we don't budget for a reserve, then when we go to buy the land, it's either going to go to debt, since we have zero in there. So maybe it isn't a bad idea. I wish I'd known earlier what was in there. Thank you.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just speaking to it, Councillor Gatward just talked me into it, and then she talked me out of it. I think we changed our mind. The point I want to make is that during the 2019 budget deliberations, any amount can be taken out of any reserve to lower the taxes. So that decision can be made at that time. But in the meantime, if the property reserve is at nil, then that may be advantageous if something comes up in the meantime.
Anyone else? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we're on to information reports. A briefing memo presented by someone. Pardon? 11. Where's 10A? Do I have that? What happened to 10A? Do you have
It's
a
in
10?
the addendum.
Pardon?
It's in the addendum.
It's evaporated. Any action to be taken? So who's speaking to this?
Your Worship, I can speak to this. This was a briefing memo that was circulated to council last week, just following up on, and I think it was discussed by council at the Planning Advisory Committee to receive a briefing memo. And so this is, it's a comprehensive memo. I think it addresses a lot of the information that's out there.
That's good.
And I think it was several of us that worked on it over the course of the last couple of weeks. And we feel that there's some valid information here. It's not only on some of the issues at hand now, but on the environmental assessment process itself, which is in my opinion, confusing. So hopefully the information will help the members of council in various discussions.
We have a motion that 10A be received for information. Councillor? You want to speak to it, Councillor Chambers?
Just basically, Mr. Mayor, that obviously will be the foundation of the working group, and it's a report well done.
Councillor Miller?
Just, I want to, I read this, and I know it's good report when I do a lot of underlining, which I did here. And what I would suggest is when the new council comes in and you have the orientation, this might not be a bad report to give them because, you know, things such as council as a whole is advised to not interfere or become involved in the Class EA process. Such a moment can compromise the process and could lead to successful appeals. So, great report on all who did it. And like I said, I would strongly advise that the new council had this as part of their orientation package because it was well done.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We were on to 11 communications and 11A, B, and C. How do you want to deal with these? Individually, they're different subjects. Now, 11A is, they're not part of any group. They don't say that. They say we're not part of the Paris Links Road Group. And there's more than one group. Yes.
Your Worship, if I could, this is based on the briefing memo, this should be referred to the EA process, and any public comments on the process should be referred to the EA. So.
Agreed. Moved by Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Simons. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So B, City of Hamilton, joint requests for federal government to assume oversight of the Basic Income Pilot Program. Well, as you know, that was a previous provincial program, which is now being abandoned by the present provincial government. And now the Mayor of Hamilton, and of course, Hamilton has particular problems on welfare costs. They've always, for many times in the past, they've had to get additional help, that city, for welfare costs. No doubt about it. That's been widely known. So how do you wish to deal with that? Councillor Gatward.
Mr. Mayor, our General Manager of Social Services from the City of Brantford has concerns about the cancellation of the program. There are families in our communities that are participating, and they've had the rug pulled out from under them by the province, and many of them don't know. For the first time, they've got secure housing,
Your recommendation is?
And so they don't know what they're going to do. And it could increase our costs as well to social services.
Your recommendation is to
So-
request from the mayor of the city?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think the federal government,
Your recommendation is?
that we do request the federal government.
You're approving the request?
To ask them
Do I have a
if they're
seconder?
willing.
Do we have a
Yes.
seconder, please? No seconder.
No seconder.
There's no seconder. So no action, no motion, no action, correct? Councillor Miller?
I'll move to receive and,
Receive for information. Seconder, Councillor Coleman. Discussion, all in favor, opposed, carried. And we're at C. Oxford County, Southwest
Yes.
BNX, Integrated High Performance Public Transportation. Do we get a line on that? Councillor Miller.
Mr. Mayor, I will move their suggested resolution that Brant County Council supports Oxford County Southwest Link's proposal for the development of an integrated high-performance public transportation solution for southwestern Ontario. As you know, transportation is an issue. SCOR's been talking for a long time. These things don't happen tomorrow. They don't happen next week. They take about a decade or two, and this is how these things start, with somebody doing a lot of legwork, a lot of hard work, a lot of research, and Oxford's
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Pierce, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that leads us to number 12, questions and hopefully answers there too. Anyone? Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to technology. I've got an answer to Councillor Gatward's questions. I emailed the chief. There is no specific date as yet in November. They had to make some changes due to some unforeseen issues, and they will get back to us as soon as they can.
Oh.
And he will also look into the opportunity of elected officials to attend as observers.
Thank you. Information received. Councillor Chambers.
A question through you, Mr. Mayor, to whoever wants to answer it. Just wondering the status of the signs for Hatchley.
What was the question?
Your worship, the question was the status of the signs for Hatchley, and I think yourself and the Director of Roads and I had a good discussion on the village outskirts, and I believe they are on order, so they'll be installed in the next couple months, I think, hopefully, as soon as we can, so.
Before the snow flies?
Certainly before the snow flies, your worship.
Well, I hope much sooner. Satisfactory. Any other questions by members of council? None. Resolutions, none listed. Other business, there were 2 members of council had their names listed. Who was the first one? Councillor Miller and then Councillor Gatward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very, just wanted to say that, thank you for your room. It was a great room. One of the seminars I attended was put on by the Ontario Water Power Association. And I'm embarrassed now to admit that I've never heard of this group until I went to this seminar. However, I think they were looking for somebody from Brant to be there, because as I found out, this group or this association is advocating on our behalf to continue with that Paris Dam, the hydroelectric dam.
Oh, really?
Yes, I did not know that. And they had some really good arguments. When the Conservatives came in and they canceled all the FIT contracts.
Yeah, correct.
They said they're saying not all kilowatts are created equal. And there's a big difference between wind power and hydroelectric. Hydroelectric being a lot and another good argument was that we do not need the electricity right now. But if you look into the very near-term future, 8 to 10 years out, the supply and demand of electricity in the province gets very, very tight. There's 2,000, and that number's correct, 2,000 megawatts of power are coming off of Darlington Nuclear Station. So there's going to be, it's going to get tight in about 8 to 10 years, and a lot of these hydroelectric projects don't, again, happen overnight. They take 8 to 10 years, especially with all the all the rules in place. So I was quite pleased with that. They talked about Aurelia, and they have a hydroelectric dam very, very similar to the one we're looking at here, same size, all that stuff. And that one was, one of the things they said, you need a champion to drive these things. There they had the mayor of Aurelia champion it, and it took 8 years to get that done. So I thought it was good, and if anybody's up in Aurelia, maybe go out and have a look at that one. So having said that, I will talk to Brooke and mention this. I suspect she knows about the Ontario Water Power Association. If she doesn't, I've got all the contact information. So just so everybody's aware, again, the project's not dead in the water, and there's still action going on for that.
So there's a group.
An association. Ontario Water Power Association, yes.
Water power. Well, that's nice, yes. I wonder how far they got with the minister. Did they meet with the minister?
Okay, that's, you know, you actually asked a very good question, because what they suggested is that while they're pushing, they would like us to push in other municipalities.
Well, that's easy to revive the application and give it impetus. That's not a problem.
So maybe at Roma, at the next AMO, we can request a delegation with the minister. And of course, our local MPP has also been expressed support for it too. So
yes.
I think it will happen. I think it's just a matter of time.
Thank you. Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My other business is also regarding an AMO presentation that I attended. It was one of the last of the conference, and it was packed. Usually it's half empty because people go home.
Yes.
But the cannabis legislation is a very hot topic currently, and we had an excellent presentation at AMO regarding the changes and the provincial initiatives that are happening.
The changes in provincial
rules around the cannabis. And we even had our new Attorney General, the Honorable Carolyn Mulrooney, attend our session because she wanted to hear firsthand from stakeholders such as the chiefs of police, all the panel that spoke about municipal government's concerns regarding this whole
We've been going through
scenario.
this for months. We've been going through this for absolutely.
Well, we only have till October 17th. So we've got a lot of work to do in Brant. They told us that at the conference. I ran into the CAO of the city of Brantford. They already had a task force on this, but he says we didn't address any of the stuff that they talked about today. So he said, we've got a lot of work to do. So I was talking with our clerk, and she told me that staff have a working group set up to deal with the cannabis legislation. And I'm not, council, I don't know if we're privy to who's sitting on that working group and whether it includes our partners at OPP, our bylaw enforcement, and so on and so forth. Because when we get that first phone call, October 17th or 18th, from a complaint from the public, we have to know who does what. And I wondered if the working group will bring forward a report to PAC, CDC, or council in September to keep council informed on our progress so that we will be ready come October 17th. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So your proposal is?
I think the CAO probably would like to speak to this to let us know about the working group and when they'll be coming forward with a report for council.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Simon.
I have another topic, if I may, Mr. Chair. I definitely got on, not on the agenda, but it is regarding AMO also.
Well, the the province is going to make the rules. It's fine for them to say, as usual. Provincial governments usually say, oh, we want all stakeholder input. So we'll give it to them. Okay, thank you. Pardon?
Could we hear from the CAO?
Oh, absolutely. CAO, do you want to speak about cannabis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Stevenson actually had this in her update to CDC, that we have set up a working group, a staff group basically, to analyze the evolving legislation and bring forward a recommendation. Now, as you just mentioned, some of this stuff is just being released now. So it will be a hurry up for us. We will get it to council as soon as reasonably possible, depending on what the legislation says. So again, your staff will analyze this. We'll include the correct partners that we feel need to be included, and we'll bring forward recommendations to council. I believe that council, and I speak very, at only high level, will have options on how it deals with the new legislation.
Because what it may say is not necessarily what it will say, because it'll go through committee.
Yes.
Provincial committee.
And we have the option, Mr. Mayor, to opt in or opt out, whether we have a marijuana shop in our county, or shops, plural.
At the present time, we do.
And they said at the session that the $10,000 minimum that would be allocated per municipality to help cover costs. If you opt out, they're still deciding whether you would get that money or not. So if we didn't get that money, we would have no money for additional bylaw enforcement or policing. And I don't think that's right, personally, because they're creating extra costs for the municipality. And we need to be compensated for their...
Included.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether they would exclude some municipalities. That doesn't sound like including stakeholders. However, we'll certainly look into it, and staff is. So that completes the agenda, with the exception of two in-camera items and a number of bylaws. Who else? Who wants to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I do apologize for not putting myself on the agenda, but I do have an item from AMO that I just would like to address in a quickly manner, if I may.
You wish to announce that?
Address an item from AMO.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have the privilege to speak to the CN Communications folks, and the communications folks that we talked to and came to the county last year, he has left, but the new gentleman is very eager to meet with our senior staff, and I've already given our CEO the name and address, and he's very eager to come and discuss what's going on, and I mentioned about the underpass of the CN, and also congratulated him on doing the tracks at the crossing at Market Street in a proper way this time. So he's quite eager to come here, and I think we should be pursuing it.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
That completes the agenda without the in-camera items. Can we have a motion now to go in camera on the two items? Corporate Development Committee in-camera confidential report of August 13. Potential litigation matter affecting, somebody should be reading this.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that the County of Brant convene in camera to discuss a potential litigation matter affecting the municipality from the report of August 13th, and a personnel matter about an identifiable individual, leave of absence.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Better turn my mic on. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Carty. The bylaws first reading be now read a first time. Bylaw number 111-18 through, and it seems to me on the addendum there's more bylaws, right? Just hang on, please bear with me. Sorry? 124? Okay. Through 124-18? Okay.
First reading of bylaws as listed, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carty, that bylaws second reading, that the bylaws be now read a second time, and all clauses and preambles be adopted. Bylaw number 111-18 through bylaw number 124-18.
Second reading of bylaws, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any member of council wish any bylaw brought forward to question or comment on? None? Please proceed.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carty, that the following bylaws be now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Bylaw number 111-18 through bylaw number 124-18.
Third and final reading of bylaws. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I guess that leaves the notice of the next meeting, which is a month from now. Sign it. I would like to comment as you leave, the next time you travel Green Lane, please, when you turn off of the Circle Road on Green Lane, you'll notice you go down the hill. Now, Green Lane was once level, right through. The county in its wisdom sold the gravel.
What?
Kevin was sitting.
Oh, I know it was.
He wouldn't answer.
Consolidated.
He wouldn't answer.
No.
Knowing
He said it was
that if the bridge ever gets forward,
But he
then
also
the balance of that would have to come over, and it would be a level where it's
Because he was going to be upset if we said
everybody else.
I can't say
Anyway,
that.
it's
I'm going to come forward.
They never got anything more, did they?
and I never felt
Gave them a
like